Welcome everybody to the first and ever Star Wars Gaming Summit on YouTube. I'm your host Captain Sidaris and I'm so glad this is finally happening. The last years I already hosted summits for the Stargate and Star Trek franchise, and I really thought, hey, it's time to make something for the Star Wars franchise, and the timing couldn't have been better. As many of you know, we are not only celebrating the 20th anniversary of Episode 3, but also the Star Wars Battlefront community has a huge influx of players. Basically, they try to get a new Battlefront game. I'm really curious if this will ever happen, but we will see. And yeah, so I thought, hey, let's invite some veterans of the Star Wars gaming community. With me, I have many new players on this channel, so I would say we start by doing a small introduction, beginning by you, ItsOiler. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Well, I spent the whole day with my child. It was taxing, but back to Star Wars.
I'm sure. Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Yeah, so my name is ItsOiler. I'm from the 104th Battalion Milsim, and I am a representative of the group.
And how did you get into Star Wars?
I got into Star Wars at a young age. You know, my dad had the original movies on VHS tape and stuff like that, so I just remember watching them a lot as a kid. And Clone Wars came out. It was one of my favorite series to watch. Randomly came across a YouTube video one day of the 104th Milsim and like their custom armors and stuff like that, and I thought it was really, really cool. So I ended up joining, and I found an incredible group of people, great friends, and have been there for just a little over 3 years now.
And was this also the introduction to Star Wars gaming for you?
Yeah, well, it was the first multiplayer game I played. I had played the original Battlefront 2 with my friend, but I didn't have a PlayStation when I was younger, so I could only play when I was at his house. So Battlefront 2 is actually the first like Star Wars game that I really played with friends.
Oh, so very recently. That's interesting. Well, then next we have Truce from the Star Wars Rebellion community. Hello there.
Hello.
What brought you to Star Wars?
Well, for me it was the I'm gonna somewhat give away my age here, but when the original trilogy was re-released in theaters in the 90s, my mother took me to see it because apparently she was a big Star Wars fan, and she thought it was very important for her very young child to be indoctrinated at an early age. And it didn't quite work, though I love the movies. But
Okay, now I'm curious. Why didn't it work?
Maybe it had to do with the friend group I hung out with then, or maybe it's just because I never really got into a particular like game or toy or anything like that. But I was the way I usually explain this, for most of my life, I was the least Star Wars person in a group of Star Wars people, and the most Star Wars person in a group of non-Star Wars people. But that changed when Disney began to mess with my childhood. So.
But still, I'm curious. How did you get then into one of the most hardcore Star Wars games ever? Rebellion isn't definitely for the casual gamer.
Perhaps true. I've always been a strategy gamer, right? But Star Wars Rebellion, I didn't even know about it. It was quite an accident. This is quite a story, bear with me. It's not that long, but I was literally at a shopping mall for an unrelated reason, and there was a toy store going out of business. And in the sale bin, for their going out of business sale, there was the box, Star Wars Rebellion. I'd never heard of it, didn't know anything about it, never seen a commercial, didn't subscribe to any of the magazines, anything, right? And the bin had a label on it, like $10, and the box was originally like $30 or whatever it sold for brand new. But then it had another sticker on it that said $5. And then I was like, you know what? I like strategy games. I like Star Wars. Why not? Kind of thing, right? And then when they rang it up, it was only $2. Best $2 I ever spent. I've been playing it for 30 years. It's never gotten old. Even when I was not a Star Wars person and didn't really play Star Wars games or whatever, I still played Rebellion. But, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I would say that's a good price for 30 years of gameplay.
Yeah, or I guess it's 25. Yeah, but 27, whatever it is now. But yeah.
Yeah, time flies. Speaking about time, I'm not sure if Captain Rex, also known as Madman with a Box, is only a Star Wars fan, but maybe also a Doctor Who fan.
Yep.
Okay, I thought so. But yeah, in this discussion, you're more or less a developer. of the Battlefront Plus modification.
I'm one of many, many developers. I want to put that out there. There's a lot of people on the team that do a lot more than I do, that have a lot more knowledge of this, but I contribute in my own small ways.
And yeah, similar question. How did you get into Star Wars?
So this one's a fun question. I think my earliest memory of Star Wars probably would have been playing Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga for the Nintendo DS. My cousins got me a DS when I was a kid for my birthday, and I got Lego Star Wars: The Complete Saga for that. But my first moment where I really started watching it and understanding it and liking it was a few years later. I had the Lego Club magazine, and I saw on one of the pages it had an advert for Clone Wars Friday nights at 9 p.m. So one day, I turned that on, I watched it with my parents, and sure enough, it was season 2, episode 5, Landing at Point Rain, which is one of the better ones. And I watched that and I was hooked from there.
And did Lego also bring you directly into the gaming world of Star Wars, basically?
I don't know. I remember I played all the Lego games. I loved Lego Star Wars 3, The Clone Wars when I was a kid. But I also had Star Wars Republic Heroes for the Nintendo Wii, and then Force Unleashed 2 for the Nintendo Wii. And I played both of those a decent amount throughout my childhood. And there was also, at least for a few years, the old MMO, Clone Wars Adventures. I played that religiously for 2 years it existed.
Really? There was a Clone Wars MMO?
Yeah. I think it was only online from about 2010 to 2014. I know there's a group, I've talked to them, I actually talked to them yesterday because they had some Battle Droid skins I was trying to make, but there's a group trying to emulate it now, over 10 years later. But yeah, it was developed by SOE, Sony, I think Online Entertainment. It wasn't anything too crazy, it wasn't as combat focused as maybe Star Wars: The Old Republic or something like that. It was more of more focused around getting cosmetics and skins, and there was mini games, and then eventually they did add some combat zones. But yeah, it was a real thing for 4 years. Pretty good chunk of my childhood.
Oh, I definitely have to check this mod project or restoration project in the future. Never heard about that game.
I'll be sure to send you some links after this then.
Oh, yes, please. Another old-time classic for me is always the Jedi Knight games. So I'm really happy to have Circa here from the Jedi Knight community.
Hey. You want me to tell my story as well?
Yeah, sure. Always.
That's crazy. There's some deep cuts that some of these guys have been mentioning. I don't think I'd ever even heard of Rebellion until maybe 10 years ago. So that one was kind of cool to hear about. Yeah, my introduction to Star Wars was in the 90s with the VHS tapes, but not the official ones. They were taped from cable TV that my parents had taped onto blank tapes. And that's how I watched Star Wars for many, many years, with the commercials still in them and everything. And so then when the prequels started coming out, I was just automatically hooked into the Phantom Menace. I mean, that I was just obsessed, and especially with the Lego sets and everything, that was my entire life. It was just the Lego sets. And then for gaming, the Lego games obviously were a big part of that as well. And not even the complete saga, but the very first one, which just had the prequels. It had Dexter's Diner as the hub world and everything. That was an early Star Wars game of mine. But definitely I think the first one Star Wars game I ever tried was Jedi Knight 1, or Dark Forces 2, and then that just kind of spread from there, and the rest of the Jedi Knight games when they came out, the KOTOR games, and it's just been a big journey from there. Star Wars has been a huge part of my life.
And I have to say thank you guys for not making me feel that old in this Discord chat. I'm also enjoyed the VHS tapes and the re-release of the special edition in the 90s. It was quite a time.
The golden era.
The golden era, which also brought one amazing racing title from that community. We have Kingbeandip. I hope that's correct.
Yeah, I'm Kingbeandip. Yeah, so I'm from the Star Wars Episode 1 racer community. I got into Star Wars. Well, when I was a young child, I saw the original trilogy a couple times. It didn't mean much to me. And then Episode 1 came out when I was 9. And I still remember going to the theater with my dad and my little brother, and it just blew my mind. The ship designs were so cool. The locations were awesome. The lightsaber battles were sweet. The music was awesome. And yeah, ever since then, I've been kind of hooked on to Star Wars.
I wonder, did you guys see the re-release of episode 1 and 3 in the cinema?
Yep, the three of us went back together to see it. So that was really fun.
It was an amazing experience also for me. What about the others?
Yeah,
I only got to see
went and
Revenge of the
saw-
Sith.
Yeah, I saw Revenge of the Sith. I didn't see episode 1 when it came out again, but definitely had to see Revenge of the Sith. I mean, that's one of
Revenge
the
of the
best
Sith
Star
is-
Wars movies, I think.
I think it's one of the best movies of all time. I mean, even the CGI just holds up so well today.
I thought the same. And it's a little bit embarrassing that those old... it's sad to say those old movies. It's, 20 years
Yeah,
ago.
right.
But they still look so good.
Yeah, I mean, it really goes to show, like, Lucasfilm put in the work for those old movies, and there's a reason why they kind of pioneered the whole CGI industries. Like, they really put their work into it.
That's one thing I really miss in today's age, that I never get the feeling in the cinema, or at least the recent years, that any movie, any TV show is really pushing the CGI, the sound effects, the amount of people they have on camera, like Lord of the Rings. It's
The one thing that I've noticed, and the one thing that I think that kind of gives some of the old Star Wars movies the charm, is their use of practical effects, right? Like for the original 3 movies, they actually used like small models of those things, and so they felt real and they looked real because they were. And I feel like nowadays, like CGI is so good that it does things that aren't possible in real life. So I feel like that almost kind of goes even negatively and kind of takes away from it,
it takes you out.
Yeah, like because it's not as believable. Because it's fake, right, at that point. Versus like in the original movies, like you saw something blow up and like it looked kind of corny and tacky, but it actually blew up. It was an actual model that they exploded. So I felt like it's a little bit more believable too.
Euler took what I was going to say and said it better than I ever could.
I'm not really sold that practical effects are inherently better than computer effects. However, as a bit of a creative, I find it extremely helpful to have restrictions on what I do. And having to do stuff practically is a massively useful restriction when it comes to creativity.
Right. That's a very good way to put it.
Yeah, and there's always that balance between using the two that maybe some films and TV shows these days don't do very well, especially, I mean, in Star Wars, they've been relying on the volume so much in the TV shows these days that a lot of them you can tell, and it's like it's a tool and there needs to be a balance. Like maybe there's a shot that you could use it for, but then put in the money and the effort to shoot on location when it's relevant and when it's needed. Kind of like how, I don't know how much you guys have been keeping up with some of the shows, but like Andor is notorious for not using the volume or too much CGI, and they shoot on location and you can tell. I mean, it looks like a big budget movie in some of those sets that they have created. Whereas some of the shows have relied so much on the volume and CGI that it just seems so small and low budget.
I totally get that vibe from Andor. It's, more grounded, everything.
But I think just one of the things that makes Star Wars so enduring and makes fans from whether from the 70s, 90s, or more recently, like so committed is just the amount of world building that went into Star Wars, and the fact that, the sets are like lived in, and, Tatooine looks like it's actually a desert moisture farming community with a spaceport and, kind of thing, right? And that's just inherently easier to do, I think, with practical effects, because you've got physical models, actual locations, kind of thing, right? And that's in my opinion, that's kind of the brilliance of particularly the original trilogy. It's just, it was like the practical effects were the base, and the digital effects were used to like enhance that kind of thing, right? It wasn't like
Definitely.
oh, we use digital effects so that we don't have to use practical effects in real location. It was like, no, let's do both. They do different things. They're good at different things.
Yeah, and I think the prequels kind of get a bad rap for that, and like the whole like a lot of those dudes that is all CGI in the prequels, and it just definitely wasn't. The behind the scenes footage that they've had for a lot of those movies, they really did make a lot of practical sets and did as much as they could. But I think it just goes to show like how much world building they did need to do in those movies, literally, where some of those locations were fantastical and like not real. Obviously, like Mustafar is notorious for being like the set that took the most effort and time and people and money to just pull off that planet and those scenes and that fight alone. And that's just one planet. And a lot of it was practical. They got footage from an actual volcano and used that on layers and layers, and the actual set that they were running on and the some of the lava flows and stuff, where a lot of that was practical. And then what they couldn't do, they, made digitally. And it wasn't quite all digitally as like what a lot of people assume.
Literal world building. I like how you put that, Circa. That's the perfect summary. Literal world building. That is like the two-word summary that makes a difference.
That's really cool. I got a lot more appreciation. Like Mustafar is like the whole entire like duel scene is one of my favorites in cinema, and to know that a lot of that was actually practical effects too just makes that scene even cooler.
Yeah, definitely.
Switching to something else digital, I would say we go to the gaming topic. In recent years, we had a few new games, Outlaws, Shadow Survivor. I tested them a little bit, but I deinstalled them sadly very quickly. I wasn't happy with them. What about you guys? What were your thoughts about those games?
I think, at least for Survivor, I haven't actually played Outlaws yet. That sounds sacrilegious to me. I loved Survivor. It was one of my favorite Star Wars games. I thought it was a great story. It was a great gameplay, improving on the previous one. It wasn't quite like a full open world, but there was a lot of aspects of it that tried to be, and I think those were well executed. And I am unbelievably excited for the next game. So I'll be frank, I couldn't disagree with you more on Survivor.
Sadly,
I agree.
Just a second. I have to rephrase that a little bit. I did enjoy the gameplay in general, but it was so buggy that I deinstalled it, and I wait for a few patches in a year so I can really enjoy it.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember downloading it the day after my college finals finished and playing it, and it was a buggy mess. But I think that was like April of 2023. I think by the end of the summer, August-ish, I think most of the bugs had been patched out by then. And my roommate actually is just playing through it for the first time, and it's pretty much all of the major bugs are gone. It's not the most stable game, but it's definitely roughly as stable as the first one was, and it's certainly playable. So I highly recommend you go back and try it.
I definitely will. I really enjoyed the first part, and I was so disappointed by this buggy mess that, I just deinstalled it because I needed the disk space and thought, hey, in the future I will play it, but for now, no way. No way in hell I will support this currently. What about the others?
I've seen a lot of Survivor. It looked really good. I played Fallen Order and I enjoyed it a lot. That was kind of like my first Souls type game, if you can even really call it that. I grew up on FPSs, and this is probably going to hit kind of deep cut with the other guys, but when I was growing up, the first video games that I played were, games that were burned onto a blank CD with the name Sharpied on them, because back in the day, you used to be able to just copy a video game onto another CD and give it to your friend. Mm-hmm. So, I grew up on a lot of FPS games and stuff like that. So, Fallen Order was a lot of fun. It was definitely a change of pace for me. There's that new game that came out that's kind of like XCOM, right? That new Star Wars game. I can't recall the name of it, though.
That's Zero Company, and it doesn't come out for another year. But yeah.
Okay, yeah. So that looks pretty interesting. I mean, I really like XCOM. I had a bunch of mods to make that look like Star Wars, but I'm pretty excited for that one to come out too. Mostly of that, though, I mean, I've come from the Battlefront 2 community, so that's really where my bread and butter comes with the Star Wars gaming side.
Yeah, I think I've played all of them. So I really like the Jedi games, Fallen Order and Survivor. I think Survivor is probably in my top 5 games. It's just so good, and I loved Fallen Order, and then they just kind of improved on it in every way, I think. So yeah, like they said, like definitely check it out now. I think they've had a lot of patches on it, and it's probably in a pretty decent state now. I played Outlaws as well, and I actually really like it as well. I think it's kind of gotten an unfair treatment by the public, people that haven't even played it, I think. And if you have played it and you didn't like it, that's totally fine. But I think it needs a second chance by people that may have dismissed it. It's actually really good. I like the story. The gameplay was pretty good. They've also patched it a lot. I'm actually in the middle of, not right this second, but I'm in the middle of playing the newest DLC that dropped with Hondo. And so it's been fun.
Interesting. What do you think as a Jedi Knight veteran about the lightsaber combat in Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order?
I think it's just different. I don't think it's worse or better. I think there's kind of an unfair comparison to it with just how unique and just more of a manual control that the Jedi Knight games had back in the day, but they really do not transfer over to console very well, and I think that's kind of what the new Jedi games have kind of geared their combat to be a little more controller friendly in that way. If you've ever played like the Jedi Academy or Outcast on a controller on console, it's not a good experience. But with the new Jedi games, it's a lot easier, but it's just not as in depth. Whereas the Jedi Knight games, you could control the direction that you're swinging your lightsaber in, and that is a very unique experience that I do adore. But I also don't think it's the only way to have lightsaber combat, so I don't know.
But on a personal level, did you miss it?
Did I miss the old combat?
Yeah, did you miss in Jedi Survivor or Fallen Order the lightsaber combat from the Jedi Knight games?
I didn't really miss it because I just didn't. In my mind, I just didn't really compare them. They're just completely different genres and different like combat systems. So in my mind, it was like, if you do that, it's like comparing Jedi Knight to, like God of War or something like that. Like they're just kind of different genres, and so I don't know.
No, totally fair. For me personally, I think I enjoyed the lightsaber combat in Fallen Order more because the Jedi Knight lightsaber combat was a little bit too hardcore for me. I just mashed buttons and it worked somehow, but in multiplayer, I got my ass handed many times.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those games where you have to sit down and learn the basics of it, and the basics aren't they're not that hard to understand, but it involves a lot of practice. That's for sure.
Well, then I would say let's talk about the active communities and active games. Something which really surprised me is Star Wars Sagas and Star Wars Galactic Contentions. Both games have huge active communities, and it just bypassed me. I guess, Euler, you can comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, so currently right now there's, obviously tons of different kinds of Star Wars gaming communities spread across different games. The 104th does obviously Battlefront 2. However, we've had a couple members from our group that have split off and kind of done their own things in different games and made their own group. We actually have an ex-104th member who has a Galactic Contention Star Wars group that's based out of Squad, and they have a lot of players with that. I think that might be one of the bigger groups that's out there too. But it's really cool just to see, so many people kind of doing their own take on like Clone Wars and, military-esque inspired groups and all.
Did you take part on any of the big campaigns they are doing?
So I haven't played with any of the campaigns of, Galactic Contention or like Squad or anything like that. I know in the 104th as well as in the 41st, which is another Battlefront 2 group, we have these things called operations, where typically during the summer or winter months, we'll set goals as like a community, kind of like, what Helldivers does, and it'll encourage all of our players to kind of go out and have some fun with each other and, kind of put a spin on an old game.
It's interesting that your community is so versatile. There are so many different games you support, and you're also a big group.
Yeah, one of ours is pretty big. I think the cool thing that I like about the most too is, all of us kind of like Star Wars, and so, it's an international group. You can meet people from all across the world that have different ideas and opinions and backgrounds, and it's always easy to start a conversation and make friends with somebody because you always have something common to talk about, and that's Star Wars, which is the entire reason that we joined the game. We're so lucky to have a space that we can kind of indulge in our, kind of nerdier side and get into like all the fun Star Wars lore. We have some really, really talented artists in our group too that help make our imagination reality. And I tell them all the time, we're so lucky as a group that, we have people that could take the things that we imagine and make them either with art by drawing or 3D renders or, whatever it may be. And that way, we can kind of live in a different galaxy, for a day. So that's one of the things that I like the most about the Star Wars community, especially the gaming community too, is just kind of how holistic it is and how it's really, really easy to just get along with people in different groups.
Absolutely. The Star Wars and also Star Trek community are basically the two communities which really introduced me into the gaming and modding world and how close everything is together and how friendly the community is mostly. Not all the time, but mostly. Another big community is, of course, Empire at War. They have a huge Discord, tournaments, and a ton of mods. It's unbelievable what this game is pushing out on mod content. I played myself around 10 different mods. I more or less enjoyed them all, especially if you go into the Stargate franchise, which is cursed by having any game on their own. And hey, there's a Star Wars game which is translated into Stargate. Big plus for me. Did you guys play any mods or did you join any of the tournaments?
Not in our end, no. We do play like modded sometimes, but not with other games or anything like that. At least I haven't personally. There's definitely people that do though.
I've played a ton of Republic at War for years. Just that specific mod. I've tried a little Thrawn's Revenge, but mainly just Republic at War. Something about it that I find really fun.
I've seen a lot of gameplay on Thrawn's Revenge, and it's really, really cool to see like just the mods that people put in to kind of like shape all this stuff to it and kind of enhance it. It's really, really, really cool.
I mean, I'm not an expert on Thrawn's Revenge because I've only played it a few times, but my understanding of it is that mod is huge and deep, and if you're into any obscure lore thing, they have it. Republic at War is a little bit of a lighter weight. It's more for kind of like the original like Clone Wars multimedia, like purists. So it's got a lot of that kind of stuff, and then it also has a decent amount of stuff from like the 2008 series onward. So that's more my speed, but I'm glad there's those just huge mods for people like me and us and anyone who's into that, just to be able to, just screw around with all of the stuff they know from Star Wars, right? I think that's really cool.
Especially if you're a fan of the old Rebellion game, there is a mod called Awakening of the Rebellion, and they transformed the game to a next level. It's more or less a total conversion of the whole game. Added so much content, so much hidden features which were deactivated by the original developers. They upgraded and make work everything. It's a dream come true. But you need a lot of time, really a lot of time to play this. Especially since we have a veteran of the Rebellion community here with us. Did you play Empire at War?
I did when it first came out, and I, like a lot of other veterans that stuck with Rebellion, were kind of a victim of the early marketing campaign. I don't know if anyone else here remembers this or saw this, right? But when Empire War wasn't out yet, but they were starting the advertising for it kind of thing, right? They initially tried to advertise it, particularly online, as the spiritual successor to Rebellion, or like a direct successor to it kind of thing, right? And they, in my mind, and most other Rebellion veterans' minds, they really were completely different games, especially the original vanilla release of Empire War. So I was very disappointed and never played it again. But I have a growing appreciation of it now. Really, the only reason I haven't given it another significant play or chance myself is just, I have my Rebellion, and that scratches my Star Wars strategy itch, and then so.
I totally understand you. I was also disappointed when I played it the first time. I came from the mindset of a Rebellion player where you have diplomacy, you can send out spies and do special sabotage missions. All of that was missing. It was a little bit too casual. But if you go into it more and more, add some mods, it's an amazing experience. So I can really recommend it to give it another shot. Another thing which surprised me is that my old child love episode 1 racer still has an active, thriving community.
Yeah, it's pretty great. I joined the community, I think, in early 2019, and the community has grown a little bit, but it's never waned. It's a really stable community, which is really nice. And we have a few mods. The big one that we have a multiplayer mod to make multiplayer actually run nicely through a VLAN. We have extracted all of the pod and track models. We are beginning to understand how to make our own models and tracks and put them into the game. That's kind of in its infancy, but we're making progress there, which is really exciting. The other big thing we have is, since 2019, we've had an annual galactic pod racing tournament hosted on Speed Gaming, and that has been a ton of fun.
Recently, I talked to Lightning Pirate, and he mentioned you have a very unique style of tournament. You don't play against each other in a LAN setting, in a multiplayer setting. You do it in a single player setting.
Right. Yeah, the multiplayer isn't stable enough for a tournament. So how our tournament works is the two players, the two opponents, each play single player, streaming to Twitch, and then Speed Gaming, a Twitch channel, grabs both of the streams, composites them together, and puts on voiceover. So
Sounds
the
really
map,
fun.
yeah, it is a ton of fun. And the first round of this year's tournament just ended. We're starting up the second round. And so in this stage of the tournament, it's first to 4 wins the match. And so basically the players kind of alternate picking tracks. And so you play up to 7 tracks and see who wins, and then it moves on to the next round of the tournament.
I also saw that you have a kind of modding community in this game. How far is it, and how much can you mod the game even?
Our community is kind of small, so we don't have huge mods. Like I said, we're beginning to understand how to mod tracks. So one thing we have done with that is we figured out how to reverse all of the tracks. So you can play all 25 tracks backwards. And it's kind of funny. Some of the tracks play just fine backwards, a couple are better backwards, and some are impossible to play backwards without dying or doing crazy tricks.
That sounds like a feature, not a bug.
It's not like people play this game without crashing anyway, so it's nothing new. The game is an extremely difficult racing game, and we love it for that.
And sadly, it's the only game in my gaming history, at least, which ever gave me the feeling of speed, of really driving multiple hundreds of kilometers per hour. It's only in Racer.
Yep.
I loved it on my N64, and also the PC version is really nice.
Yep, it is fantastic.
A small tangent here, since you just mentioned that, and it is another Star Wars game. For me, that distinction goes to the Star Wars Original Trilogy arcade game, which I recently, only about a year ago, discovered how to emulate, and that's the... so,
I don't know why,
I don't know
but
if anyone else is familiar with that, but yeah.
You just jogged my memory on like the Revenge of the Sith DS game. That was pretty. Well, it's either DS or Game Boy game. That was pretty good.
I'm pretty sure it was DS and then PSP, maybe.
No, I think I might have been Game Boy.
Advance.
Yeah, Game Boy Advance. I'm pretty sure it was.
Yep, I've got it right here on my desk.
Oh, that's P gaming. I remember as a kid, like I couldn't beat it because I got stuck on one of the missions with the tank. I didn't realize you had to like deflect the blaster bolts back, and then like 10, 15 years later, I went back, booted it up, and figured it out.
Yeah, gaming was a lot harder without YouTube.
Yeah, no guides for anything. Although that does also kind of jog my memory then on like, you know, those old like gaming TV shows that they had where they would like show you the Easter eggs as part of the show, and that was the whole thing. I kind of miss the charm of that.
Oh yeah, call in to Yoda's help desk for a hint.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So one other thing about the racer community is there are 25 tracks in the game, and we now have skips for most of them, which is really cool. We figured out, we know in depth a lot about how the game works and how the game counts laps and progress around the track and loading parts of the track. And that's enabled us to really push skip play, where we cut out huge portions of certain tracks. The most dramatic is on Abyss. You guys, if you've played Racer, do you remember Abyss near the end of the game where you have to go around this turn at the beginning of the track, and if you fall off, then you basically lose because you lose so much time?
Vaguely.
I replayed it recently, so I know it.
Nice. Anyway, we have a skip for that track. So the skip record for that track is like under 20 seconds.
Holy cow.
Wow.
Yeah, we figured out that you can, right at the start-finish line, you can climb the wall there and do a couple loops and skip the entire lap. So we have full lap skips on a couple tracks like that.
So is it kind of like a Super Mario speedrun thing where you do certain actions that then kind of like have like an effect, or are
Yeah,
you, like,
kind
actually,
of. Yeah. So on this particular track, how it works, you climb up the wall, and then if you drive over, like you're vertically over, not necessarily touching, but if you drive over another part of the track that is far away, as far as the game is concerned, from the start-finish line, then it changes your position on the track to that point, and then when you drive back to the start-finish line, it changes your position to just before the start-finish line. So you do this little circle, and you complete a lap, because on that track there just so happens to be another part of the track right near the start-finish line that you can fly over to update your position.
You know that the original testers on that title used that to get out of having to do that.
That's right. So we have a similar lap skip on the very first track in the game, on Doug Derby and Inferno. And then for other tracks, the skips are basically the track crosses over itself or near itself, and you can jump up in a certain place and fly over, cut a few turns or something. Recently, just like a couple weeks ago, we discovered a new skip on Executioner. It's the most bonkers skip we've ever to watch it is just insane. So like you fly over part of the track, fly over do you remember the UVU tubes, that are the anti-gravity tubes? So you like fly through this thing, and it's not even visually loaded, and you pop out and come out different part of the track and clip through the ground, and it's an insane skip.
That does just sound like Super Mario.
Yeah,
speedrun.
but we didn't really discover this skip because the skip is so technical that it was really developed, is the better way to put it.
I always wondered how people like discover, like, is it all by accident, or is it just somebody just sitting there one day just trying to run into a wall at 50,000 different angles for like 2 hours until something happens?
Well, Ace, an older player, a few years ago, did exactly that. Turn on invincibility and drive into walls for hours on end, seeing what works. And he discovered a lot of skips that way.
That's incredible.
I've got to say, sitting here listening to your, I'm fascinated that it would be the racing game that the reverse engineering effort almost approaches what we've gone through for Rebellion.
I didn't even know there was I didn't even know this game existed before this, but now I'm like completely enthralled. I feel like we need to have like a complete separate section just on this alone.
It's a fantastic game.
Oh, that definitely will be in the future. But I'm curious, how fast can you now complete the game? I know roughly it's 4 to 5 hours if you are a vanilla player. But if you use the skips, how fast can you beat this game?
It's under 80 minutes. Let me find the record here. Wait, what? Oh, this doesn't make sense. I think I have a weird filter applied. I don't know what's going on here. It's under 80 minutes.
Still amazing. If you can beat a game that fast, not bad.
Yeah, another weird thing about it is that the handling physics, not the speed, but the handling physics are frame rate dependent. And so some skips work better on low frame rates, others on high frame rates. And so doing a 100% run, we don't allow changing frame rate during the run. And so you kind of have to sacrifice some skips to do others or to make others easier. So it's it is a very complicated run.
That brings testing for glitches. It makes it a lot more complicated.
Yeah, for sure.
A game which really runs amazingly well on any hardware, on any operating system, are the Quake 3 games, which are also part of the Jedi Knight games. And this game is also having a huge community. The map collection alone is unbelievable in this game. But maybe our resident experts can share a little bit more about that.
Yeah. It's a pretty big community still. Obviously, it's been shrinking over the last few years. Well, since the beginning, obviously, but it's still going strong. And over at jkhub.org, we still get tons of new mod submissions. I mean, every week, but maybe just about every day too. People just still churning out those mods, and big or small. It's been pretty crazy.
And do you still have a lot of multiplayer activity? Are there some tournaments even?
Yeah, multiplayer is still pretty active, at least active enough. I know some of the old ESL players, since ESL for Jedi Academy shut down, they've been trying to start up their own, I forget what it's called, but there's still a lot of players that play through tournaments, and of course there's still clans. There's a handful of pretty big clans still that, run their own tournaments, and yeah, it's still pretty big. And then obviously the mods help that a lot too. Just adding different experiences, like Movie Battles 2 is one of the biggest mods that Jedi Academy has, and it's all multiplayer, and it's all about playing battles from the movies, and a lot of that attracts new players, especially if you're a fan of the Battlefront games. And it's a similar setup kind of gameplay. So yeah, it's still big, and it fluctuates, just kind of how the Battlefront community has fluctuated recently, with people excited for Star Wars for one reason or another, and then the numbers go up in Star Wars games.
What do your tournaments look like in that?
I mean, it might just depend on the community that's doing it. I know the old ESL players, I mean, they just do a ladder style, usually 2v2 or 3v3, just saber only, so no force powers except for jump. They usually restrict it to jump 3, and yeah, it's just a ladder style of tournament. So
cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out, I know they posted on our forum to see what that new group is called, because ESL shut down completely recently, but they shut down the Jedi Academy tournaments a few years ago.
Is there a big reveal at the end of a tournament where they say, but who was defeated, the master or the apprentice?
They should. Face It is the website that has the Jedi Academy League on it now.
I wonder, are the master servers are still up? I know from the Elite Force community that the original master servers from Relic were shut down a few months ago, or even a year. Not sure exactly on the timing, but is it still up?
They're up and down a lot. We suspect that they're just constantly being DDoSed, and then Raven Software doesn't really pay attention to them that much, so we kind of have to poke them, their support, to say hey, they're down again, and then they put them back up, and then they get attacked again, and then... So I think a lot of us have just kind of given up on it. JK Hub does provide a master server that pretty much every server uses now, and the clients that we use, like OpenJK, include that automatically. So if you boot up Jedi Academy through Steam vanilla, without any mods or anything, it'll just show a blank server list most of the time, unless you happen to look at it when this master server happens to be up for an hour or two, or maybe a day. Otherwise, you would want to, use one of the community source port clients to connect to those easier.
Yeah, sorry, it was not Relic, of course, it was Ravensoft. And yeah, luckily we have those community servers, so we can always play those games. It's a big bonus compared to the newer games, especially Battlefront. Yeah, I fear if one day the master servers in Battlefront 2 are shutting down, especially Battlefront 1, it's over. Only thing is saving in Battlefront 2 the Kyber community, I guess.
Yep.
They could save the day.
That's I'm tangentially related to them, so now you're getting into my my wheelhouse here. So, for those of you who don't know, Kyber is a private server network for EA Star Wars Battlefront 2, the 2017 one. There was a public version 1 that was released in late 2021. It's currently offline. It wasn't the most stable, but it was a nice little experiment. Right now, we/them are working on Kyber V2, which is almost fully functional. We've had several builds of it over the past few months. I could play it right now if I wanted to. Right now it's in beta access. If anyone's interested in it, if you go to the Kyber website, I'm sure there's instructions on how to sign up for the chance to join the playtest. But yeah, Kyber, they'll exist forever, even if the EA servers ever go down. It's fundamentally just a private network, or private server network, which means that you can join big battles even just during the playtest. Especially right now with all the Battlefront 3 craze going on. You go on there and you see dozens, if not 100 people playing on servers. You also can start a private server, just screw around with your friends. And then we also, because it is a private server network and has nothing to do with EA's servers, means we can run mods online, and that almost as if they were part of the base game. And that's where we come in. I'm on the BF Plus team. We're we believe the largest mod pack for Battlefront 2. We have the title, which is like official Kyber mod partner or something. Kyber has some servers preset that just run our stuff 24/7, and we try to add as much as we can to Battlefront content-wise, while also kind of maintaining a lot of the design philosophy and quality that went into the official EA release. And yeah, for anyone who's interested in playing, which I'll give us a nice little advertisement right now. We don't know when Kyber V2 is going to come out. That's the Kyber people's thing. They're still figuring that out. I could get a notification today that, we have a release candidate and that it'll be released next week, or it could be a few more months. I'm not sure. That's their decision and call to make. I know they still have bugs to iron out, but they're very close. They have a lot of the major stuff figured out to the point where I'm playing it almost every day just because I like Star Wars. And then if you're interested in the kind of stuff we've added through Battlefront Plus, we have a website, battlefront.plus, I think, which just lists out all of the content. A bunch of cool stuff. We have Ahsoka, The Mandalorian, Cal Kestis, Dagan Gera, Marin, Padme, Ventress, all that good stuff. Yeah.
If I could just piggyback off you too, as somebody who's from the Battlefront 2017 community, the Kyber team has just been incredible for the community and the work that they put in to help keep the game alive and also just keep the servers running. There's been a lot of attacks on the Battlefront 2 servers that have really brought at least the PC side of the game to its knees at several points, and to keep delivering content to a game that lost support a long time ago, but that obviously has an incredibly strong and still very passionate community. Like I was saying before, I think Battlefront hit its highest player count in the 2017 version on Steam this past Friday, at like a peak 12,000 players, which is the most it's had even since the game released, which is just absolutely crazy for a game that's been out for about 8 years now.
And I'll build on that too. Like, I literally talking to some of the Kyber people, I wouldn't say instrumental, but they contributed to that spike too. Like we had an event running and it was like, hey, let's get people on the vanilla servers to get this peak as high as possible, just to show anyone out there who's listening what the community interest is. And it's been toxic and contagious. I was in a car ride with my sister today, and I mentioned that I'm doing this interview thing for my modding project. And she's like, well, what's that? And I'm like, yeah, I mod some Star Wars games. She's like, is it Battlefront? And I'm like, yeah, that's the one I've been playing for years. And she's like, there's a bunch of my boyfriend's friends are in like a frat or something, and they said the group chat's been lighting up lately with Battlefront 3 news. And I'm like, that's insane. Like, you never care about this.
That's awesome. That's really cool. It's kind of cool to see like that game has had just such a big influence on like a lot of people, and it's really unfortunate because there's not many good multiplayer Star Wars FPS games that I think, the 2015 and 2017 Battlefront are really the only two viable ones. I know that they did the re-release of the original Battlefront 2, but that was an absolute train wreck from what I heard.
It was bad. To give you an idea of how bad it was, and I actually bought it, so I know what I'm talking about. I've played it. they couldn't figure out how to redo the menu, right? Like they had the PC port of 2005, it has one menu, and then the original like 2005, I think console game has like a different menu with like movie scenes and stuff. They couldn't figure out how to change the menu, so they loaded the original one on top of the regular one. To the point where it's an extremely buggy mess now because there's multiple menus being run, and whenever you boot it up, you see the regular PC one, and then the original one just kind of flashes over it. Like it's not remotely viable. I remember.
Such a shame. That was such a good opportunity to like really re-release the game.
Oh,
in
yeah.
great, you know, state.
I was so excited to play it with like some friends that day, and then when we found out it was crap, we were just like, all right, and we found like a private server network for BF2, and we just played the existing Steam port. Like, I cannot begin to talk about how bad that was.
Sadly, being at the subject of bad things, one thing I really hate in the new Battlefront games is that there is no server browser. That you can't really select the map you want to play, to host, to experience together as friends against bots. Is this all now possible in Kyber? Especially the bot part?
Yes.
That's good.
Well, you can host your own server. There's port forwarding and stuff too, so there's minimal, if any, security concerns. Or we have 24/7 servers running that people are normally in anyway. But yeah, you can host your own server, which means choosing a map, choosing map rotations, choosing player counts, choosing bot counts. Bots are still kind of a work in progress. There's actually, earlier I was talking to one of the guys who does those. He, basically the current version of the bots are, I think it's the co-op AI. It just spawns in a bunch of the co-op AI, and they have a couple modifications on them to make them work with other stuff. But that means some of the more basic game modes, like Blast, which is team deathmatch, and then Supremacy, which is just basic capture point. You know, the AI works pretty well during those. It can choose heroes. It emotes after it kills someone, which is funny and annoying. At least some of the heroes do. But it does that, and then they're working on a new one, which I think is going to be in the next test version. We're talking about it this morning. That's supposed to be way more encompassing. Like it can do the ion disruptors in Galactic Assault, which I haven't actually seen this yet. I just know they have a work in progress version, and they're working on a better work in progress version. So in theory, next few weeks, and then whenever we do a public release, the AI will be maybe not quite indistinguishable from a human player, but more than able to fill its shoes. So it gives you, I can't stress enough like how much control that gives you and us, the players, in terms of how you want to approach the game. If you just want to screw around, you know, if you want to play hardcore scenarios, if you want to play in the middle of the night when no one else is playing, you know, you could run a server, get a couple people in there, fill it with bots, and have a good time. Like it's good. It gives you so many options and features. That answers your question.
I'm so happy to hear that. I always thought, who in the right mind designs a game where you can't play all the content with friends, or if the game is more or less dead? There are so many game modes where I would never find on a normal day players. And if I have bots, which are funnily already in most of the game modes included, that's amazing if I can't do it on my own.
There's a game mode, I think it's called like Jetpack Cargo or something, that's not actually like normally available anymore on through the menus and stuff, but you can use a mod to play it if you've got and it also the game mode's still live, there's just not a way to access it unless you use a mod that lets you queue for it specifically, which I think is really interesting. My group will sometimes do Jetpack Cargo events, but it's something that you kind of have to set up internally because of that.
Yeah. Again, I don't want to self-promote too much, but anyone else have any other questions about Battlefront Plus, Kyber? There's a lot that's cooking, and it's not like, oh, you know, someday we'll do this, someday we'll do that. It's more or less stable now. I've played versions on it. It's, in some sense, done. It's real. It's here. Anyone else want to know anything about it?
There's no chance for it to ever be on console, right? I mean, I'm sure that's not really how things like that work, but I mean, is there any talk about that? Is there any even possibility that those features could end up going to console at some point?
I'm not an expert on some of the back-end stuff. The answer is probably no. From a technical perspective, it is possible, though. But possible doesn't mean feasible.
Right.
Yeah, that would
usually the issues with those kinds of things
right?
are the certification processes to get stuff in the store and stuff is usually the
Oh yeah. I can't really speak too much for the Kyber team, but presumably if something like this ever were to come to console, it would be through some kind of hypothetical future, third-party modding thing, not through the official store or something. Although who knows? Crazier things have happened.
This isn't necessarily Star Wars related, but now that you say that, it's an interesting point. The Armor Reforger is a pretty big game now that's kind of bridging the gap between PC and console gaming and trying to introduce a more modular and moddable game to console. I wonder if there's any possibility for, stuff like that to work with Kyber. And, like you said, it's kind of hard to publish stuff on the game store because obviously it's got to get approved by the game creators and maybe not related to Star Wars. But I think it's an interesting question to see like what custom made content and how that'll work on consoles, if that needs to get approved or if it could all be, downloaded through an online, store through the game that has a disclaimer saying like, hey, this is not like, use at your own risk.
I think, at least from more of a cybersecurity perspective, stuff like that is the exception instead of the norm. Like they would never put a warning on there because if there's a chance that this software, poses any kind of threat to your console, that means that it's a very good gateway for a hacker or something, right? Like I think those two things are pretty similar in terms of cybersecurity. So anything that they weren't sure would be stable and safe would also, start preventing dangers for people to be hacking into multiplayer servers and open them up to a wave of cyber threats that they don't normally want to deal with or find ways around, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
like
100%.
This is really obscure, and I don't even know where I know this from. But I heard a story once about I don't even know what console, but some console patched out a thing like this weird workaround that let you use like a keyboard instead of a controller, because that made it notably easier to complete some action in some game, probably a shooter, and it was effectively a hack. Like it gave some people who did this complicated physical workaround a significant advantage over others. And you look at controller versus keyboard, and it's like just that was able, to be a significant enough thing that they had to patch it out. And that's just, you could say, physical person side stuff, let alone any kind of aimbot that you might be able to load onto a console. So yeah.
I at least know from the original Battlefront 2 community that they modded the console versions. So it's possible in some ways, but I guess it's way too complicated for normal people who are not tech savvy.
I imagine the only way again, crazier things have happened, but to me the most likely avenue, which isn't even that likely, would be a third-party mod. I'm not an expert on consoles or console modding, but I assume at some point in the future it'll maybe become feasible for PlayStation 4s and Xbox Ones to be, jailbroken, modded, whatever. And in that hypothetical future, if it's easy enough for the common person, from our perspective, it wouldn't be too difficult to integrate a lot of our Kyber stuff to be able to also work with the consoles, but that's out of my realm.
Yeah, it would have to be a console that doesn't have support anymore, not getting those patches.
Yeah.
Is there anything that the console versions can do that the PC versions can't?
Yes, there is. Not anymore because we have mods, but there was. The console version of Battlefront 2 had couch co-op.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
I'm one of maybe 2 or 3 people in the world that has used Battlefront Plus and by extension PC Battlefront couch co-op. It's a complicated workaround, and I need to buy better controllers for it. But yeah, we basically just checked a box that was like, yeah, okay, this console-only co-op thing is now enabled. Obviously, it's local single-player, so you don't need to connect to Kyber through it. It's entirely a Battlefront Plus side thing. And then you got to plug in some controllers, but you can play couch co-op now.
Nice.
Oh, and we had to add controller support too. But yeah.
One thing I always wondered, is the Battlefront 2 community now able to create new maps?
Yes.
They
have
have
on
for a
one.
while now, I think. Like they have on Barra, right?
No, wait, we're talking about.
Well,
EA
I think
Battlefront, right?
Yeah, I think so.
The answer is kind of. So pretty much from not inception, but the release of Frosty, there's been like primitive map mods. Some of them are better than others, but none of them were particularly good. They were flashy. I've played a lot of them. They were fun, but we didn't have the, I guess you could say, technology and back-end setup to actually add new maps. And a lot of what you see is, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, because there was certainly a lot of work put into doing this, and they did it well, but it was kind of smoke and mirrors, right? There's a really good Mimbon map. If anyone remembers Mimbon, it was in the Solo movie briefly, and it's been mentioned in other stuff. Someone made a Mimbon map for Battlefront 2, but it was basically just Scarif with a bunch of the objects removed. It was the same like terrain, and then they put a lot of effort and did a good job in adjusting the lighting, adjusting the textures, but at its core it was nothing fancy. We now are kind of on the cusp of being able to do a lot of this stuff. We know how to do the back-end support to add new maps and modes. Some of the plugins are still being written that make it compatible with other stuff we're doing, but the logic's there. And then we've already been experimenting with actual maps. I think the most promising one we have so far is someone has the majority of 2015 Battlefront's Bespin map, the big one that's outdoors. The majority of that is loaded into BF2, and a few weeks ago we actually had a playtest with that. There's also some other cool stuff, like if anyone knows Ewok Hunt, they ported a specific map in for that from Battlefront 2015. And with a little bit of finagling, once we get the rest of the back-end logic done, we'll be able to play the 2015 Ewok Village Endor map in 2017 because it's already in the files.
That's cool.
Yeah, so maps are eventually. They're kind of here. There's still more steps for them. I'm not sure what the details are, but obviously this stuff's hard to do, so I can't imagine there'd ever be that many, but who knows.
So we won't have something like in Battlefront 3 Legacy, where basically can take an X-Wing from the ground level and fly into space?
Probably not. It's just, that's a lot for the engine to handle. But, yeah.
Well, at least we have other content to look forward to.
Yep.
A question from the chat is, would it basically be possible that we have host-side mods for the console versions, where basically the client doesn't mod his files, so the host is taking all the heavy load?
In terms of consoles?
Yeah, I guess the question you can take for both the console and PCs.
Modding Battlefront 2 from like a host side of point of view, probably not. A large amount of just the game's logic is handled on client-side stuff, then it just interfaces with the server as needed. So, no, not really. Sorry.
No, it's totally fine. It was a valid question, but yeah, it's just a restriction, sadly.
Yeah, basically, the way the PC modding works for multiplayer mods is it's easier to explain when there's a independent server instead of someone running the server, but just for logistical purposes, like there's a handshake thing where the server and the client are running the same mods for anything that involves, gameplay, logic, any of that stuff. There's cosmetic mods, like, you can change a texture or something, and those can be client only, right? Like, there's certain like FX things that can be client only, but all of the gameplay, for all obvious reasons, has to be handled through the server, which means that anyone joining the server has to have the same mod set, which fortunately is very easy to do through Kyber, but there's no real value to or need for like a host only mod, if that makes sense. And yeah, it wouldn't make console modding magically feasible.
Just a quick question to the chat. Talia, is this basically a good answer for you? Do you want more? In the meantime, anyone else has a question at the resident expert?
Have you ever had any pushback from EA on Kyber or any of the modding?
No.
That's good.
I don't think there's anybody to even complain, because I guess they ended live support. I'm sure as long as nobody's trying to sell it, and at that point it's not even like it's just EA getting involved because of the money at that point.
Yep, that's correct.
Cool.
Well, then I would say let's move on to the last resident expert and the Rebellion community, which is sadly a little bit harder to mod. But yeah, I was surprised that there are some mods.
Yeah, it's I'm not even sure it's fair to say it's harder to mod, but unfortunately, quite a few years back, about a decade ago now, the Star Wars Rebellion community had a major website incident that wiped out a lot of content and documentation that had been made, and so there's a lot of we used to have a much wider selection of like edits and mods that were either linked to or we hosted ourselves in a not a lot, much of that has never been recovered, or the original authors or mod teams have not returned, or some of them moved on to Empire at War or other things, right? The big thing is Star Wars Rebellion is just such from a technical standpoint, the game is designed very different than how most games are today. So it has to be approached in a different way to edit it. But I'll stop there because I could go on a tangent forever about reverse engineering. but yeah. So.
And how are you currently playing the game together? Is it via Game Ranger or a VPN?
I personally do neither. I know there was a big following on Game Ranger for a while. I know there are lots of people, and in some cases groups of players that have been playing with each other, since the 90s, since it was brand new, kind of thing, that do use VPN solutions. The simplest way is just to do the way it was originally intended with a, direct IP and, for the ports and you're done. Of course, there are going to be certain jurisdictions around the world where port forwarding is just not allowed or technically or legally feasible. There's relatively few of those, but they do exist. And then we actually have several veteran members in the community that, because of their work, travel a lot. So they primarily play from like hotels and stuff. And of course, if you're in that kind of situation, you have to use a VPN or a virtual networking solution. There's one that the community has used for tournaments and events in the past called Zero Tier. That's a virtual network solution that has a free tier that we've utilized. On the VPN side of things, obviously, WireGuard's probably the best choice, but people are familiar with different things. I personally, direct connect port forward the traditional way, and then I do have a couple of regular semi-regular opponents that one of them is in a jurisdiction where the his country's national internet infrastructure does not allow conventional port forwarding the way it's set up. It's island nation, so we I WireGuard into his local network and we play that way. So there's many different options out there, and then of course the apps like Game Rangers and other things. So
I wonder, were there ever any tournaments in Rebellion?
It was a little before my time, but apparently this was a very common thing in the late 90s and early 2000s. For the 25th anniversary, a couple years ago, we held a tournament using Zero Tier, and then there was one organized several years before that, right around the time I was voluntold I was going to be a staff member in the Rebellion community. And there's a lot more frequent, not like official tournaments or anything, but there are a lot of groups of players that have been playing for varying lengths of time that are regular opponents and routinely trade off games and kind of organize what essentially resembles a mini tournament, but they don't actually organize it that way from the outset, right? But you get a lot of friendly banter and stuff. So if you are looking for a multiplayer opponent for Star Wars Rebellion, the best way to put a little plug here, the best way to do that is with the Star Wars Rebellion community's Discord. The short URL for that is swrebellion.link/Discord. And that's our little short URL thing we have that the community pays for, and that'll redirect you to the current permanent link to join our Discord. And there's a multiplayer channel, and it may seem inactive at first. A lot of what happens is rather than because people are exchanging IP addresses or VPN keys or whatever. Generally, you'll just have like one message in the multiplayer channel. Someone says they're looking for a game, and then whoever's interested direct messages that person, and then you set up your game. So
nice.
Rebellion is one of the only games I only played on LAN parties with a friend together. I never experienced the online multiplayer side. how stable is it? Especially since we now have a little bit faster internet than the 56 kilobyte era.
Yeah, it's especially with our fix package that the community offers is it's very stable, and we call it a fix package, not a patch, because we're basically just upgrading the versions of 2 files in the game to a newer version that's even newer than the digital distribution versions distribute themselves, and that's the majority of the issues. Most of the instability that some players occasionally experience playing Star Wars Rebellion, whether head-to-head or not, actually comes from like external applications, newer technologies that the era Rebellion wasn't used to handling. So Discord trying to insert its in-game overlay over Rebellion, Steam trying to insert its in-game overlay over Rebellion, OBS, so on and so forth. So you can record the game just fine. Most of the time when we help players out, my staff member position in the Rebellion community is one of my hats I wear is the lead of the game support volunteer staff, and we do occasionally have a weird issue and a user that's willing to like stick with it, and we'll deep dive into whatever issue they're having. And particularly since we started distributing a standardized fix package about 5 or 6 years ago, probably like 90% of the like weird issues we've run into have turned out to be like there was a recording app running in the background that they didn't know about, or something was trying to inject this external DLL, and Rebellion was like, what the heck, this is my memory, with our fix package, probably 90%, 95, 99% maybe even of the issues that do occur playing head to head are only when you're exiting a tactical battle, and particularly if one of the users tries to like click on something after the battle ends. That's the biggest window of time where issues occur. But I still play Rebellion matches, both single player and head-to-head all the time, and I maybe save the game once every couple hundred days, game days, or right before a tactical battle is basically the only time you have to like that's sort of the norm. The polite convention amongst the regular head-to-heads is to, the day before your fleet exits hyperspace and you think there's going to be a battle, shoot them a message in the in-game, text thing, and let the host know, hey, can you save real quick, winky face, when you're about to bombard their planet. But yeah. But yeah, it's very stable, assuming you apply our fix package and follow the directions. And if you need help with that, come to our Discord and the game support channel, or post on the forums.
Is there any difference between the GOG version and the Steam version? I know for Empire at War, it's recommended to use the Steam version.
Yeah, we recommend the GOG version, but not because the files are different. So whether you get it from, what is it called now, EA Desktop, or Steam, or GOG, it's the same files. In fact, if you pay close attention and you dig through your Steam files, you'll actually find files from the GOG version, or that are, have configuration for GOG services and stuff that aren't actually used. So they're all identical game files. There's no difference between them regardless of distribution. The reason we recommend the GOG version is, again, like I was saying, probably 90% of the issues that anyone encounters are from external applications. And Steam likes to try to, as a client, by default, like its default configuration, it tries to inject itself into games. When you say, hit play on Steam, it wants to provide the overlay and everything else. And if users don't take the time to explicitly configure those things to be a non-problematic, whereas because GOG is good old games, right? So whether you're using the Galaxy client or the standalone installer option, it by default doesn't try to do anything with the game. So if you're not a technical savvy user, or you're just lazy like all of us can be on occasion, kind of thing, right? You can kind of just click play on GOG with, fewer steps beforehand to have a problem-free experience. But you can have that same experience regardless of where you get the files from, with just a few extra steps. So, yeah.
Good to know. It's always interesting that there are sometimes difference in the versions. Like I mentioned, the Empire at War version on GOG is not recommended because they stopped at some point updating the game on that side, and on Steam they still update it, and there you have all the mods. And on the Battlefront 2 game from 2005, it doesn't matter. There they update both sides, and you can play and mod both sides. So it's always nice to know.
Yeah, indeed. And just for the sake of argument, and if you still have an original CD version out there, you can adapt that into a standalone installation, which will work just fine with the other versions. Though that's a lot more steps. But for those people out there who are stand the line on I already bought this game, I don't want to spend another penny. There is a way. There is a way.
Like $2.
Yeah, my $2. Yeah, well, it's just, very very economical return on investment, right? But I actually have bought the game several times over since then, but I don't think I've still technically paid the full price that it would have been. But anyway.
Exactly. Those sales for those old Star Wars games are cheap.
Yeah. In fact, if I can go on a tangent for just a moment, so there's one extra part to the story I told of how I discovered Star Wars Rebellion that I didn't give before, because it's not directly related to the question you asked me. But one of the curiosities when I'm, in this going out of business sale and discover this box, and I'm wondering, can I afford this with my allowance? And then it rings up with $2, and I'm like, yay, right? The box was open. Like the seal, the little tape was broken. But, nothing appeared to be missing. The lovely manual was there, the disc was there, all the, the legal crap on the that you don't care about was there. It was like, okay, nothing's missing. So fast forward like 12 years later, or 15 years later, something like that, right? I just, in passing in the Rebellion community, noticed someone talking about a poster. And I'm like, Star Wars Rebellion had posters? Kind of thing. And they're like, yeah, it came with like all the original boxes or whatever. And then my brain flashed back to the tape being broken on my box that I got for $2. And I was like, son of a, So I went on a hunting expedition online, and there were some people, trying to sell the posters on like eBay or whatever, like just the poster for like $200. And I found someone who was selling their original copy of Rebellion, and I could see from one of the photos that it had, this folded white thing sticking out of it that I didn't recognize. And I was like, I bet that's it. And he was only selling it for like, $10 or something like that. He didn't know what he had. Bought that thing. Best decision I ever made.
Nice.
I feel now cheated. As a European player, I never got that. I still have my original disc and the amazing manual, but no poster. Cheap fucks.
Well, apparently, so it's funny you say that, because for years and years I thought it was like a North American or US only thing, but not terribly long ago, less than a year ago, like a few months back, like end of last year, we actually had a Spanish user upload to us the Spanish version from European distribution in Spain of the poster. So apparently there were posters for the European version's game. It was just apparently a much more limited run much later on, which none of us in the community knew. Yeah, so
I hate them. I so hate them now. Another classic title which still has a huge community is X-Wing, and the sequels. It's unbelievable what those guys are achieving currently. Have you ever heard about the X-Wing Alliance upgrade project or the TIE Fighter conversion?
Oh yes.
It's just a few steps below of a completely new released title in 2025. They have VR support, they have beautiful graphics, they have everything you can imagine in a new game, plus more, because the modders are creating such amazing content and more missions, more spaceships, everything. I really can just recommend you guys check it out if you have a flight stick. It's an unbelievable experience. I sadly don't have a VR experience myself, so no classes here, sadly. I bought Squadron and I was so disappointed. It was a nice redo of the old games, but it was shallow and behind a big master server where you have to log in before you can even start the game, and the controls were all wanky. You had to mess around so many hours to get it really in a stable condition. And yeah, like Jedi Survivor, I really didn't touch it again. In the future I will, especially if I want to do a video about it, but yeah, it needs some convincing for me.
Yeah, I think that developer did a very good job with it, but it was very clear that it was the publisher didn't seem to think there was going to be as big a market for it as there was, and you could kind of tell with the launch schedule it was given and the amount of testing that seemed to go into particularly the infrastructure on launch. That was very unfortunate, but
I mean, I can't imagine being a dev back then too, and just making this game that you're just like, oh, this is kind of cool, but there's not much like it, and we're not even sure if people are going to like it. And then how many years later, people are still, trying to squeeze every last bit of experience out of it.
Especially if you consider the time of the development, where they didn't have much resources. I had the developer of X-Wing Alliance, or one of the developers of X-Wing Alliance on this channel, and the stories he told us, how they developed a game in 1997 for a 28 kilobit modem, it was mind-blowing how they approached those problems. And to emphasize that X-Wing versus TIE Fighter was a multiplayer-only title in 1997.
Yeah, that's actually pretty crazy if you think about it. I mean, because even I think when I think about old PvP games and stuff too, the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is Quake. Quake was one of the first games that I played, so just I think that something kind of populated the space at the same time, and just back then, what they were able to pull out with, I mean, really just fractions of what the power we have in a calculator these days is really, really cool. How old is the game now? When did it?
It's difficult to answer. The original X-Wing was released in '93, if I remember correctly. Then they had TIE Fighter, X-Wing versus TIE Fighter, X-Wing Alliance, and during the X-Wing versus TIE Fighter era in '97, they decided to re-release the old titles in the new engine. So it got a facelift, improved features, graphics, everything, and it's still very well playable. And it has still a community. They still have PvP matches, content creations, everything. And the latest game, X-Wing Alliance, was basically the pinnacle of mod development in the X-Wing community, at least. There they did every amazing feature you could imagine how to improve a game. Basically, it's not recognizable to the original game anymore. It's so much more.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
But yeah, I would say that's sadly everything I can share about different communities in the Star Wars franchise. Do you have anything else?
Captain, you can't ask me that. I could talk all day long about Star Wars Rebellion.
Let's rephrase it. Have you any additional informations about different communities?
I know I talked about them a bit at the start of the stream, but the Clone Wars Adventures emulator team, very tight-knit, very dedicated. A couple of years ago, I had thought about joining them before Kyber was even a thing, and then I actually decided against it because it was very intense and they have a very rigorous dev cycle. But that's a surprisingly big community of people who are really dedicated to that most people outside of it have a very little idea, as you guys did, that the MMO even ever existed. I know they're not done with making their emulator. I don't think they've done a public release for years, but if/when that finally maybe someday happens, I imagine it'll be a decent sized community.
Thank you for mentioning that. It's a huge fail on my part to completely forgot one amazing community, the Star Wars Galaxies community. It's a dead MMO from original 2003. It was killed in 2011 because, hey, we can't have two MMOs at the same time, so let's kill the old one, which was for me at least the better one. It was a sandbox experience where you could play every kind of role you could imagine in the Star Wars franchise. You could be a bounty hunter, a Jedi Knight, a politician, a dancer, a image designer, a starship creator, a crafter, everything. It was a huge world, something like Star Citizen in 2003. And yeah, like I mentioned, it's dead since 2011, and the community is still keeping this game alive. They even have they got a leak of the original source code and still upgrade the game, add new features. For example, in this game, you have different planets, of course, but you can also build your own houses on those planets. So they added Bespin, where you can have now apartments and you can decorate your apartment as crazy as you want. It's, like I said, a big open sandbox.
Yeah, they have. I agree. They have a pretty big community too. I was just interacting with them a few days ago, getting some reference for Battle Droid skins for Battlefront Plus, too. So yeah.
Just one other one that hasn't come up or we don't have representative of, but I want to throw out there because it's a game I play, though I don't know much about the community itself. But Star Wars Galactic Battlegrounds, and particularly the Expanding Fronts mod, has been huge lately. Though I personally primarily play vanilla, but the amount of people I've seen, even in the Rebellion community, trying to like connect to play that and stuff. So
That's true. I never stumbled over their community sites or discords. That's true. They should have definitely something going there because it's on mod database.
Yeah, and don't want to forget to mention the Knights of the Old Republic community as well. They're always churning out mods over there too. Their main community is at deadlystream.com, I think, and some good guys over there and gals.
Rex, you mentioned in a direct message you have to go.
Yep, it's getting close to dinner time. So yeah, I don't know if we're wrapping up right around now, but thank you guys for having me.
If the others are still up for it, I would still talk about what we basically wish in a new game.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still gonna be here. Yep.
I mean, I'll be honest, Jedi 3 and Battlefront 3 are really the two big Star Wars games I'd be interested in.
Republic Commando remake as well.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be a good one. Yeah, I'd love. I'll steal the spotlight for a minute since I gotta go, but just goofing around with like some of my friends and roommates, some interesting ideas that I don't know if they'd ever happen or not for a third Jedi game we've had would be Darth Maul as a villain, Darth Maul and like Crimson Dawn. We think would be good, like like an additional non-Empire faction, like the first game had. A bunch of like creatures in the Haxian Brood. Second game had those, and then it also had like the Bedlam Raiders with all their battle droids. I think the Crimson Dawn and Darth Maul would be a good villain for the third game. I don't know if the new Darth Maul show is going to overlap with that. And then I think for lightsaber upgrades, Cal Kestis should get the Inquisitor lightsaber. I think that'd be a good additional stance for him to have.
Yeah, that'd be kind of sick.
Yep. And yeah, with that, I think I'll leave you guys. I'll give you one final plug. I can send you the link, Sidaris, but Battlefront.plus is the mod pack we have. That's a website. If you type in Battlefront.plus into your URL, you can see it and see all the content we've been working on. And then Kyber also, private server network, they have their own website. Be sure to check that out. And we've talked about it already, but in case anyone out there hasn't heard, there's a huge Battlefront 3 support weekend going on right now, so be sure to log on to your vanilla server and show your support and enjoy the game.
Before you go, I also have to mention you have a beautiful website. It looks just amazing.
Yeah, no, there's a couple people that love working on the website and they put a crazy amount of effort into it and they have a lot of pride. So I'll be sure to pass that on. Yeah, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I've worked on a variety of things. The main ones I did were skins for the battle droids. So when you play the Republic Commando skins for the battle droids and the Son of Dathomir ones and all the Clone Wars variants, think of me.
Nice.
We certainly will.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, Captain Sidaris, as well as everyone else. I will let you go, but have a good rest of the stream.
Thanks for joining, and we will be in touch for more chats, I guess.
Sounds good.
Pleasure, X.
Well, guys, shall we go to the next topic? What we wish in a new Star Wars game?
For it to exist. I guess my standards at this point are pretty low, just begging for Battlefront 3.
Yeah, that would be a good one, but still, I just throw in some nuggets here. I definitely want not a fucking mobile game. I want a real adventure. I want not a Happy Meal at McDonald's. I want something real, something with direct IP support, map editors, co-op. I love co-op. And most games don't have it. And yeah, give me also a good manual.
So Star Wars aside, any game that goes through a proper design process in the beginning and has the time to do so.
Right. Again, standards really low at this point. Please, guys, throw us a bone.
Like one of my co-hosts always says, where was the fucking tester? Just test your product. We touched at it a little bit, the Battlefront 2 re-release of Aspire. Holy cow, where was the tester there?
I'm not even sure if it wasn't the fact that they didn't have a tester as much as it was that they were just trying to push it out for like a really, really early release, and the dev team probably just didn't have enough time to fully patch it up. But if I remember also seeing too, like it was a pretty new studio that looked like a lot of new talent, and I'm sure like, the crazy expectation of, what EA might push on some amateur developers is a lot of pressure to take, and unfortunately, the work just didn't hold up to what the project was supposed to be.
I can accept that if it's a few bugs, nothing too crazy, but if you can't even launch the title, if you have graphical bugs already on nearly every map, you only have 2 servers, the list goes on and on and on and on. Yeah, it's hard to swallow.
Especially since that wasn't the first time that Aspire has released something in that state.
That's true.
I feel like they have a problem with every single thing that they release.
We are baffled by Aspire's handling of the re-release of Racer. Because the community knows of tons of bugs that would be great to be fixed, and Aspire decided to not fix any of them and instead made some other changes.
Well, at least they added something.
And the changes that they made are so minor. Like they made gravity a little bit weaker.
Okay.
And that's mostly it. They changed a little bit of the UI. Like they barely touched anything. We're not even sure that they had the source code.
That's actually kind of crazy.
Uh-huh.
This is not Star Wars, but talking about this reminds me of the only game I have ever purchased that was technically impossible to install. Right? It was an Ubisoft published title called like Hawks or something. It was supposed to be like an air combat thing that just completely bombed because no one on PC could install it. Even by that low standard, right? Kind of thing. Some of these games do a pretty poor job. But yeah, when you don't even test, can the user install this? Yes or no? That's the state of game development for the past like 15 years, right?
But it's interesting that you mentioned that they didn't have the source code. One thing I noticed when I watch their YouTube videos or the videos of their content basically is that the UI is now more crisp. It's a little bit modernized. So I guess they would have a little bit access to the source code.
Well, we have modded that in the PC version. It's not too difficult to do. Basically, it just replaced the font.
Oh, okay.
So that's not a very impressive tweak.
I would think they would have to have it for the console release, though, because that's like
Maybe.
a different. It wouldn't run as an executable.
Well, the console release, we believe, is based on the Dreamcast release, which is very closely related to the PC release. So I don't know.
Weird.
I have seen some legacy titles in the past do a weird thing where they have like a launcher that launches the executable with other things that but calls other things first or whatever.
Right.
So sometimes strange things happen and then they get packaged together and then But,
See, I feel like you kind of have to though with some of those older games because that's the only way that you can really get like a hotfix to work with the old code instead of going in and trying to pull it all apart and splice it back together with the chance that it won't work again.
Right.
Very true with most games, though. Shameless plug. That's one of the things, especially as a technical professional, I really appreciate with Star Wars Rebellion is the just all the time we've spent, reverse engineering and documenting the game and reducing the amount of time it takes for people to make the exact change they want, kind of thing, particularly in the future, right? And then just you really get inside the head of the people that designed that, and you can tell like everything was designed and like planned from the beginning, with a few exceptions, of course, kind of thing, right? And it's just so clean, and it's like some of the ways they did some of the things are so foreign at first, and then once we figured them out, it's like, wow, that's beauty right there, and then it makes everything so simple. So.
Quick side question for Euler from the chat. Gum is asking, how is the 104th doing, and what are they planning to do to capitalize on the current hype?
Yeah, so the 104th has been really active for Battlefront for a really, really long time now. But internally, it's been really, really awesome. We have, I think it's just above 2,000 players right now currently that are active playing. So right now throughout our server, all of our staff members and raid leaders are going out, basically just spamming raids all day. And what I was going to tack on to the end of Rex, right before he left was, with all the hype that's going around with Battlefront 2 right now, if people are trying to get back into Battlefront 2, and you're finding that the lobbies are stacked or a lot of these good players are coming out, I offer you guys, come join the 104th. It's the reason why I joined at first. I was sick of playing alone and getting beaten by these teams that had coordination. And, you join the 104th. It's really a great community of people. And we play games together as a team all the time and use team tactics to win. So, this past weekend has just been nonstop games. I mean, our VCs are just absolutely full of people, actually overflowing to the point where people can't even get into the match. Because if you know, Battlefront's a max of 20 players per game. In certain instances, we have VCs with, 25, 23 people in there and people that are waiting to get in if anybody drops out. So right now, we're really just trying to enjoy the new hype of Battlefront. The game just went on sale recently, so there's a lot of new players, a lot of new talent coming in. Really, like the whole entire point of this too is just, a push for Battlefront 3, showing companies that like, hey, we're still interested in a first-person shooter Star Wars IP, and this game's not dead yet. And even though support has ended, the player support and the love for the game definitely hasn't.
For sure.
I wonder, how do you guys manage to play together Battlefront 2? Because you can only have a group of 4 or 5 players.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things on PC, I'm not quite sure if this works with console, but I believe it would too. When you start the game, right, when you're sitting in the lobby as the timer is counting down, when you're in a squad with people, if you start a group of 4 people, those are the people that you're going to be in a group with when the game starts. So on PC, what we can do is if we have a game that has, let's say 12 or more people, in order to keep things organized so that way people aren't yelling and screaming and everybody's getting a headache and we can work, tactically as one, we'll split the groups up into groups of 4. And basically you'll add those people on EA or whatever program that you're using. And then as the match countdown starts, we're going to leave the group. So if we have 20 people in our group, everybody's going to leave the group and then they're going to join with the 3 other people in their squad. And what that basically does is it ensures that once the game starts, you'll be in a squad with those 3 other people. So you can basically determine who will be directly in your squad. And that's what our squad leaders can use to organize men. Otherwise, if people don't want to do that, we just load into a game and, we'll kind of call out, a couple of players that are, willing to or offer to lead their squads. And we say, hey, so-and-so, who's in your group with you? And then the raid leader will write down, who's in the group. And that way you can manage your troops like that as well, too.
It's such a frustrating thing when a developer is deciding, hey, we don't do a server browser, only matchmaking and only 4 friends in your group. It is very hard for communities.
Yeah, it's and it's especially frustrating too because EA also owns the Battlefield IPs as well too, and Battlefield has one of the easiest and most recognizable squad systems in the game, and it's been like that since the early 2000s. And so it kind of seems like a really missed afterthought to not have that kind of squad system in the game where you can join and play off your friends, and there's a little bit more of a squad interaction. Unfortunately, it really is just limited to getting spawns off your teammates, which I think is pretty diluted.
It's pretty ironic too in the context that so many of the franchise, whether it's Battlefront or Squad or the newer Battlefields, all come from Battlefield. So it's not like it's
right.
Oh, we don't think players will like this or this is hard to implement. Like, it's being used all the time in the same kind of framework. And then
and that's, like I said, it's one of those things where, much like the modders for this game or just in the Star Wars community, us players have really had to figure out just how to kind of make these systems work for us many years after they were created. I really, really enjoyed my time in the 104th, and being able to group up with people and play a game that I love and, have a good time with definitely takes a lot of the pressure off of, some of the more tough matches. And it's just a really, really great way to enjoy games. It's better together, 100%. Another shameless plug for, the 104th or any of the other Battlefront communities too. I know the 41st is also pretty big as well too. I believe there is the 51st. I'm not sure if they're still around, and the 501st as well, which does also have a bunch of members too.
Sticking with the topic of FPS games, I would say let's talk a little bit what could be a new Battlefront. What modes could they have and what features should they not include, for example?
I can take the lead here on this one. It's something I've been thinking about a lot, and one of the difficult things that I think that we're starting to notice, at least with Disney and the Star Wars, is kind of the departure from the prequel original trilogy era where, they're kind of moving away from the Clone Wars and from the Empire. And that's really, really tricky, right? Because obviously, we've had a lot of content made for the Resistance and the sequels and all that, but that hasn't really resonated as well. And, a lot of those stories kind of go in different directions. So it's really hard to kind of get like an image of, what these games are supposed to be. I don't know if there's necessarily enough new Star Wars content to create a Battlefront game that's centered around a new era. And, games, I think we just had a game that got canceled, or maybe it was a TV series that was canceled about a more earlier timeline in Star Wars history. So I think it's definitely part of the reason why we haven't gotten a new game yet is just because, it's kind of a toss-up as to what the game is going to be about. The Battlefront, 2017 covered a lot in the most recent years, but I don't really see much else in terms of like FPS content that wouldn't really copy off of what was already made, and I don't know if there's enough stuff to make something unique, unless you went down the route of a side story like The Mandalorian, or maybe something with like Andor or Mandalorians in general. I mean, there's a lot of different cultures in Star Wars to explore. But it seems like people are really, really always just trying to push either the Jedis or the Clone Wars, but there's a lot of other smaller stories to tell within Star Wars, but I don't know if those would necessarily make good games.
I think that if we're not necessarily saying this for Battlefront itself, like a Battlefront 3, but just for a new Star Wars FPS, I actually was talking about this with my brother yesterday. We're big Call of Duty fans, and, say what you will about Call of Duty, but they do a lot of things really well. And I think what they do really well that kind of has set the stage for a lot of FPSs since Call of Duty has kind of taken over the FPS scene is just like those smaller maps that are a little more streamlined and a little more dedicated to like competitive quick action play. And I think a Star Wars game like that would be really, really cool. And in terms of just like what you said about like what era are they going to put it in and what is it going to focus on, I just feel like they could just follow the same process that they went through with Battlefront 2 and just cover as many eras as they can and as much content as they can, and maybe not focus too much on like making it canon. Like I know in Battlefront 2 they eventually unlocked all the heroes for any era, so you can use like Luke Skywalker in the prequel era or whatever. And I know that wasn't how it was at launch, I don't think. Like, just kind of take the reins off of that mentality of like, oh, if it's not in the same era, then you can't use it. Whereas, like, you look at, like, Fortnite, where they just have, like, all of the, a whole bunch of Star Wars characters that you can play as, and, like, they're not worried about what era that takes place in. Like, you can play Darth Maul versus Darth Vader or whatever, and it's fine. And I think it's more focused on having fun rather than, making it make sense. And I think that should be the focus on a game like that, where you just want to play as a certain character, or like if it's an FPS, like I want to play as a clone trooper or Republic Commando, and like that's what you pick, and then you just jump in and have some fun and like some capture the flag or something like that. I would love that.
There's something that you kind of bring up in one of the game modes that I completely forgot. It was from the original Battlefront 2, is the Galactic Conquest, or Galactic, I think it was Galactic Conquest, where you can like, use the star map to go around and capture planets. I'm really, really upset that game mode didn't make its way into the 2017 version of the game. That was honestly one of my favorite parts. I really like the whole entire bigger picture aspect, to games like that, where it's, there's mission objectives. The missions that you pick or the choices that you make affect the outcome of the war later on, and I think that's a really, really awesome way to add a little bit more depth to the game. One of the things that I don't want to see in Star Wars, though, is, and this kind of building off the Call of Duty thing, not saying that they'd kind of go down the Call of Duty route, but I noticed that a lot of games these days are, kind of blurring IPs together. And it's not like the worst thing, but for me, like I always think it's kind of weird, or, when you have like Fortnite that's got like General Grievous with a pair of like Air Jordans, like hitting the gritty or something, or like, you're playing Call of Duty and you get killed by like the Kool-Aid Man or something, or just completely crazy.
Right, yeah.
Like, it's all fun and games and stuff like that. It's just like, at least for me personally, if I'm playing Star Wars, like I want to play Star Wars to feel immersed in that, universe. I joke with some of my friends, they have a couple mods on Battlefront 2 that convert like the NT-242 to a Barrett 50 cal, and they're like, oh my gosh, dude, this mod's so cool. I'm like, yeah, I know, but if I wanted to play Call of Duty, I go play Call of Duty. I want my my Star Wars to feel less like everything else. But, as long as they just kind of keep true to the form and it doesn't get outrageous. I mean, I do think, I know the huge criticism of loot boxes early on, EA was just like, well, you guys wouldn't want like a pink Darth Vader. And then people are like, we're going to make a pink Darth Vader mod because you know what, maybe we do. Like, that stuff's still, I guess, kind of okay, because I think that's kind of funny, at least in universe. But I just hope
Yeah.
that, you know, these games kind of maintain their own identity and kind of just stick with that is, I guess, one of the things that I want the most.
Yeah, I definitely
I
agree
think
with
the
that.
only like mixing of things without any concern for like IP purity or consistency I've ever seen that was good is like the original Call of Duty. Speaking of Call of Duty, one of the greatest zombie mods ever made. I forget which one it was because there's like 12 back then, right? And if you got like the survived the longest or got the highest score or whatever, you could come in as Teal'c with the staff weapon or the Star Trek red shirt with the phaser or or the stormtrooper with the blaster rifle or whatever, kind of thing, right? And so that was kind of funny because it was, already outrageous zombie mod and it was like special round, right? But outside of something that's like intentionally special or weird or like particularly when it's like a mod like that, whatever. But
Yeah, and that's the other
Something
thing
else
is
in
like,
Star Wars is pretty cool. Like, I'm fine with making other things into Star Wars that's neat, but I just don't want my Star Wars to turn into something else.
yeah, I definitely agree. But I think that's the other beauty of like catering towards a modding community. So like if someone wants a pink Darth Vader, they can get the mod for it as long as the game, supports the mods. But like that's not going to show, I mean, usually how games have mod systems. The other players aren't going to see that. But like if you want to see that, that's fine.
Yeah, like to
I don't wanna
what
see
you
it.
said, Euler. Like, yeah, like Disney's already messed with my childhood. We don't need game developers to go and start messing with what's left of the stuff.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Oh my god, now we have a Mortal Kombat game from Disney, and it's Snow White versus Princess Leia. Like, okay, that might be kind of cool. Don't get me wrong, but like, I guess she's a Disney princess technically.
Yeah. If I could, real quick, to go back to something Circa just said a moment ago, too, I'm going to disagree with you and agree with you at the same time, right? So, like, I'm personally not a fan of, like, the trend to, like, ever smaller maps, because I actually agree with your assessment of what Call of Duty did right, but even if you look at the Call of Duty series from, like, the original Call of Duties to, like, more recent ones, the trend has still been for those maps to get, like, smaller and smaller and kind of, like, less playable.
For sure.
Kind of thing, right? Which I personally strongly dislike, right? But I will say, right, on what you said on having just your comment on having like a first person, Star Wars like shooter game that has kind of like a smaller focus as opposed to like the the Battlefield heritage of Battlefront or whatever kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Since I was young, I have been waiting for the game, even though I don't normally like these kinds of games, right? I have been waiting for the game where I can be the rebel trooper defending the Tantive 4 from the stormtroopers breaching the door. Or I can be the stormtrooper clearing the Tantive 4, kind of thing.
I was gonna say, dude, that's gonna be like a Halo Reach moment where you're not making it off that planet.
yeah, and then just expand that same idea. Take like all of the shit, even the Death Star, right, kind of thing, right? Like I don't know of a single Star Wars game. I don't think there's even really mods that really properly do like a. I realize there's like Galactic Contention mod for Squad, right, kind of thing, right? But like, where's the Squad equivalent in like the Star Wars universe, right? Of like an organized, simple, simplified, low user interface tactical shooter, but like do the Call of Duty style small maps. Like, hey, you're fighting over the Tantive 4. The Imperials are breaching the airlock. Try to defend the ship or whatever kind of thing, right? Or you have to find where the smuggling compartment is in the the YT 1300 freighter, kind of thing, right? It doesn't have to be the Millennium Falcon, right? And particularly if we got some actual innovation in mapping technology, right, kind of thing. So maybe it was like semi-randomized, right? So like, the exact layout of the internals of the Curling Corvette or the Star Destroyer or the, the freighter or the Cloud City or whatever was a little different every time, Like,
Yeah.
That'd be fun,
Yeah, and like going back to what I was saying, like with the whole smaller map Call of Duty kind of thing, like I would just love it if it was in addition to Battlefront, where like you get Battlefront for the large scale. Because like when I would play Battlefront, I honestly prefer to play Blast and like Extraction, like those smaller modes where it's like 16 versus 16 or whatever. I loved playing those more than the bigger ones, and I think that's just, I enjoy Call of Duty more than Battlefield too. I just like the smaller modes. But I also, if I have like a squad that I'm going in with, like I still enjoy the bigger modes too. I just like having the option of both. But like you said, it could be like a little more like narrative focused too. Our idea was kind of just basically a Republic Commando sequel, but it doesn't have to be Republic Commandos. Like it could be like any era, any faction, and I feel like that would have some really cool scenarios and almost like Rainbow Six Siege kind of thing, where it's
I
like
wish we
a
got
little
to
more
see-
tactical, smaller scale. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I wish we could see more of the like the Empire side of things too. Like we got a little bit of a taste of it with like the Battlefront 2 campaign where you got to play as Iden Versio, and I was pretty disappointed that it was a pretty quick turncoat situation over to the rebels. But
Yeah.
definitely something with like either like the Death Troopers or even like ISB agents or something like that, or even Purge Troopers. I think that would be a really really cool concept for like a one-off game. But that's also, I mean, I guess then we kind of get to the point too where it's just like, well, what do we want from the new Star Wars experience? If it's an FPS game, is it going to be more of like a storyline kind of type game, or is it going to be a multiplayer shooter game? Because I'm not really confident anymore, like EA, that they're going to be able to pull both of those off well at the same time. Like it's either one or the other. Either we get like a really good campaign-based game, or we get a really, really good multiplayer PvP game. But I don't think that those things are going to be, packaged together.
Yeah, like in the 90s, you had TIE Fighter, Force Commander, early 2000s, Galactic Battlegrounds, Empire War. But like since then, there's basically, it's like since the prequel trilogies became the focus of, and now the sequel trilogies became the focus of the merchandising, it's like all the game developers for what relatively few Star Wars games we've gotten just kind of like forgot that like the original trilogy existed almost, like especially the Empire. Yeah, so.
I don't know if it's like a Disney thing too, of like, maybe not wanting to tell the story of like the quote unquote bad guys per se, but I think if there's anything that Star Wars highlights, it's just that the line between good and bad is a very blurry thing at most instances.
Yeah, what's that famous there's like a famous foreignpolicy.com piece, I think, on like the Empire did the right thing by destroying Alderaan or something.
Yeah, dude, I remember that one guy made that video. It's just like, hear me out, guys. Like, Empire, bad guys, maybe, but unemployment on Alderaan is 0 in one day. Like, name another politician that's reduced unemployment to 0. No more homelessness, no more poverty, no more starvation. We're good. Like, yeah. I mean, I guess if you frame it in a certain way, it's not as bad, but. I kind of want to plug a really fun YouTube channel for Star Wars content, not to kind of diverge too much from the games, but there's a YouTube channel by the name of Arkin the American, and it's there's a very popular video that I'm sure you guys have seen. It's called How Liberty Dies or How Democracy Dies or something like that. And it basically just talks about like how the Republic fell and the consequences of these things in the world, and how Palpatine kind of was stringing things along. And the member is from the 104th, but his YouTube channel and all that stuff and his identity outside of the 104th is completely independent of any of the work that he does inside. But he's got a lot of really, really awesome videos that go really in depth about just the bigger political movements in Star Wars and kind of an explanation for the universe in and of itself. And I think everybody really, really liked Andor because it kind of showed like the non-Jedi space wizard part of Star Wars, that like there's so much more to the universe than that. And it'd be nice to get a game that doesn't necessarily focus on the Jedi or the Sith or maybe some of the more smaller conflicts. I mean, I guess like maybe a first-person game about the Old Republic with like the Republic troopers would be really cool. I know that obviously they have clips and stuff for the Old Republic game, but maybe going further into one of those eras would be kind of neat.
You mentioned a few things here which you all would like to see in a game, which things you don't like to see in a game. There's one game which really did amazing thing here. It let you choose what your servers are. In the Battlefront 2 from 2005, you basically could decide what era you play, what combinations you want, who gets basically the hero characters. Is it the player with the most points, least points? Is it random? You can have so many systems in one game. Also the map size, the older Battlefield games had different map sizes for different server slots, basically server sizes. So you had a different map size for 8 players, 16 players, 32 players, 64 players. So you could have so many things in combination or not. You choose as the server host or the game host. And also speaking about the Battlefield games, there was the Battlefield 2142 game where I had the Titan mode, where you basically had a ground battle where you needed to capture silos to turn off the shields of the Titans, then board the Titan and destroy it from within, basically. Something like that in the Star Wars franchise would be amazing. Just an upgraded version of the original Battlefront 2.
I think you had mentioned something about it earlier, and I think it's like a really, really big concept, at least in gaming now, but having a sandbox feature that allows people to create content after the game is published, I think is really, really important for the future of really any game. You kind of talked about it earlier about, having the settings and having the ability to, maybe create new maps or create new content or set game rules and stuff like that, I think is something that's really, really needed in a game like this. Fortunately, like I've said earlier, we've been able to heavily lean on this incredible modding community that's been able to push out content. I mean, just years after all of these games have come out, and despite maybe not having the original source code or not, knowing how the games were created initially, they've gone out of their way to really work things from the ground back up, and to get everything ported back into the game and to create new content. And I think the ability for players to be able to do that themselves would really, really, really help the longevity of a game like Star Wars. I know, in the event of Battlefront 2, one of the main reasons why support ended was due to the whole entire loot box fiasco and EA not being able to milk the game of more money like they had originally probably planned in their sales program. But being able to sell content, maybe kind of like how Bethesda has the Creation Club, where your assets can be sold and stuff like that, I think would be a pretty interesting alternative that I think could help a game like EA kind of financially justify having a game to also be able to publish content, but that's not predatory in the form of like gambling, essentially, right? Where you allow people to create stuff and keep the game going, and then EA can get their kickback and just make us another game, and then we can enjoy the benefits of having all those tools at our fingertips. But I think that does add a huge layer of complexity to making a game too, that I don't know if they're willing to splurge on for Star Wars.
Yeah, that would be great if they did something like that.
To be honest, it's always so strange, in my brain at least, that they spend millions of dollars to create those new titles, but they don't have as many features as the old titles. It's so strange that, the older titles are beating them left and right sometimes. Where is the money going, basically?
Licensing.
I think it was a lot
Yeah.
easier back then too, because back then people really had to establish their companies. People didn't have as much outreach. Social media wasn't as big as a thing, so advertising was a lot harder, and your advertising had to come from your work. You really had to put out a good product, otherwise you really wouldn't get that traffic to come back to you. Versus nowadays, everything's so well advertised, and everybody's word of mouth is such a big thing that it's just kind of meh. They announce a new game. I remember when they announced Survivor, I wasn't even really surprised that the new Star Wars game was coming out. I just kind of thought to myself, oh, okay, it's probably gonna be like the old one, probably gonna be the exact same thing. And there wasn't really games just don't generate excitement anymore. And you see all these small indie companies that are really trying to focus on their smaller games, and it's that game's coming from passion and stuff like that. And I think that's really important nowadays for gaming.
Yeah, most marketing has effectively become legitimate spam.
Yeah.
All of that is totally true, but you have to consider back then they had to develop their own engine, their own multiplayer system, their own matchmaking. Every little detail they had to develop themselves. Now you have libraries. You want an engine? Just buy the Unreal Engine. You want a multiplayer system? Just use this library. You want assets for Tatooine? Use this asset library.
They can be like that, but in the case of Battlefront, that's not the case. I mean, they have their own engine.
Definitely. You still can go the route of developing everything yourself, but you have a lot more options, especially. It's a hard topic currently, of course, but the friendly neighborhood Skynet is around the door. We will see how this will influence development, of course.
Yeah, that's always the tough thing too, because on one hand, yes, you absolutely have all the resources, and you can say oh, well, you have all these things at your fingertips, but also kind of got to consider that the market's changed, especially with production of these things too. It's not about necessarily making a great game to stand out as a company. It's now just about beating the other companies to release your game sooner. That way, people buy your game and they're busy playing that instead of something else. Just even the market and the culture behind how these things are created has kind of changed and shifted. Which is, again, bringing it back, really happy for the modding community, for people that are still passionate, that do it out of the love for doing it and not for necessarily a financial benefit.
True, if they still let us. Sometimes it's, rare.
Yeah.
And I think, honestly, that to what you were saying, Setters, I think part of the problem is we've swung too far the other way from the... you're not wrong what you said in terms of, early 90s, they had to do everything themselves, and that's not necessarily economical, and that makes it harder to be successful and get everything right, that kind of thing. But I think we're we've swung too far the other direction now, where like there's this assumption like, oh, you have to use a commercial off the shelf game engine and all these assets and libraries, and so that does like two things, because A, you don't have, you know, all these components you're using to develop your title aren't actually designed with your intended purpose in mind and are often like poorly suited, you know, kind of thing, right? And then also when like a studio or a backer is like hiring people, then, you know, you're hiring a lot of like lesser skilled people, and you don't have like the senior, you know, designers or engineers or whatever, you know, kind of thing there, right? And I think it was sorry, this is not Star Wars, but I think it was Door Kickers, I want to say, had like a really interesting series of articles like a year or so ago from their dev team, basically talking about like, you know, we did it all from the ground up, and it saved us a lot of time and money and gave us a simpler, better game, you know, kind of thing, right? And I think a lot of these commercial engines, like, you know, Unreal Engine or whatever, have just become so monstrous and such a Swiss Army knife, and that, you know, that jack of all trades, master of none, you know, and have just become so gigantic and difficult to customize and stuff. Like there are obviously like huge benefits to having like that a lot of people that are familiar with the same back end and all the tooling and stuff, you know, kind of thing, right? But in a kind of weird kind of way, it's kind of a this like what I see as an over reliance on like off the shelf commercial game engines is kind of a negative feedback loop that's kind of keeping the quality of games low. You know, kind of thing, right? Because it kind of gives them an excuse to skip the design process. Yeah. So.
Well, and even then too, like if people are using the same programs to create games too, then, you know, you start to kind of blur the lines between IPs as well too, where games start to feel the same in their mechanics and whatnot too, which is also kind of an issue. Those games lose their individuality and character.
Yeah,
because if you're using the same tools and the engine already exists, and you can just like skip what would have been the first 2 years of, you know, the development process in the 90s or whatever. Why do you need to think about how the movement works or when the audio gets played or, you know, kind of thing, right? The engine just does it for you, you know, kind of thing, right? Like, yeah.
I miss how scrappy and experimental games used to be. Like, not everything had been developed yet, so everything was kind of, we'll do this for the first time, see if it works. Whereas now all the games we know exactly how to make a strategy game and exactly how to make a shooter, and it makes all the games very much the same and forgettable.
Yeah, or I would edit your comment by saying we think we know, but yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, and it also like makes it so people don't like try to go out and like reinvent things too. You know, people are like, you know, kind of how you guys mentioned earlier, like if all these programs are available at their fingertips from the start, it kind of causes people to be less imaginative with what they do, and that also kind of waters down the product at the end of the day too.
I just heard the magic word strategy game. Let's switch to that genre. Would you like, in general, more an RTS experience or something turn-based? Where are your preferences?
I'll go with that first, since I'm the representative of the strategy game community. But me personally, I actually kind of nicely dovetailing off of what we were just talking about. I kind of hate when games settle on like, this is my genre, and because the last 2 successful games in this genre did this way, I'm going to do that same thing the same exact way, right?
Yeah.
And I think see a lot of that nowadays.
Yeah, and again, shameless plug for Star Wars Rebellion here, right? But I think that's one of the reasons it's never gotten old for me, right? Is because it's this interesting hybrid between some of the things that later got cemented as quote-unquote RTS and some of the things that later got cemented as like turn-based, because the game system is like continuous flowing time that you can't stop without, you know, pausing the whole thing. So it's like quasi real time, but it's all event driven on the back end. So there's like game day, everything happens on like a game day or a certain portion of a game day, you know, kind of thing, right? So it's not like, you know, seconds ticking by and like a, you know, a Command and Conquer or, you know, Total War sense, right, kind of thing. So it doesn't work like RTS, quote unquote, you know, kind of thing, right? But it's also not like, you know, not turn-based where you have to hit turn, you know, so it's this continuous, uninterrupted, you know, action or like decisions or information being presented, but there's not there's a consistent flow, right, kind of thing. You don't like have a sudden burst and then like nothing happens and you don't know when the next thing's going to happen, right? And that kind of thing, personally, I really enjoy, you know, and I don't know how much of that is just that's actually better, or that's just what I'm used to, or I like it better because I've been playing Rebellion for 25 years and that's how it works. And that was sort of my first, right? But yeah.
Sorry, but I'm out of time. I need to go. But thanks for having me on. It's been good.
No problem. Do you have 5 minutes, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. Before you go, we'll switch back to the strategy game genre a little bit later. Maybe since you're the resident expert on racing games, do you have an idea what a new racing game should look like?
I am not hopeful that we'll ever get another pod racing game.
Wouldn't be complaining if we did, though.
So, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer came out in 1999, the same year the movie was released. Then a few years later, they made Racer Revenge for PS2 and other... Oh, wait, was it PS2 exclusive? I don't remember. Anyway, that game is completely different, and I hate it. And then I'm not hopeful that we'll ever get another one because Disney has shown no interest whatsoever in pod racing since they acquired Star Wars.
I mean, I don't know. Have you seen Book of Boba Fett? They had that Vespa speeder chase. That was pretty intense.
Okay. Still not pod racing. So, like in episode 8, for instance, they go to a casino and there's a horse race out there, right? Why was it not a pod race? They could have thrown that in and sold more pod racing toys and maybe made another pod racing game, but no, there just seems to be no interest whatsoever in it anymore.
There was I think it was an Andor maybe, or maybe it was Skeleton Crew. They had pod racing on a screen. I thought that was kind of a cool little Easter egg.
We have pod racing at home moment.
However, if they ever make one, I think the community would love it. The pod racing game has sold more copies than Wipeout or F-Zero, which are,
That's really nice. I know those games from the past. It's unbelievable. Wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah, it was an unbelievably popular racing game. It's the racing game that people buy even if they don't play racing games. And so, yeah, I would just love another one made in the character of the original. The original game is rather quirky, but we love its character and its replayability. So yeah, basically just remake it and we'd be happy. And I think it would sell well.
It's sadly a sad statement that most gamers just wish the old titles remade in just better graphics, improve a little bit the features, but don't dumb it down or mistreat it in any way.
Pretty much.
It's simple basically, but we don't get that.
Yep. But I need to go.
Thanks for joining us. It was lovely talking to you, and I hope we hear each other in the future again.
Yep.
Pleasure, King.
Sure thing. You can find our Discord. I find it on speedrun.com. And we have a tournament going on. You can watch it on Twitch on Speed Gaming's channels.
I will definitely put all the links in the description for the video version. So if you have a link or anything I should put in, just send it to me later.
All right, sounds good. All right, thanks for having me.
You're welcome, and see you.
See you.
May the force be with you.
Yeah, moving back to basically strategy games, and maybe we could have a Vato repair shop empire simulator, where you basically can direct control the pod racers you repair and then send in.
Yeah, like a pod racer tycoon.
Either that, or do you know Dungeon Keepers? Any of you?
No.
Okay. It's an old RTS game where basically an evil dungeon master. An amazing feature in this game is you can directly control a unit. You have, for example, Witchers. You zoom into the Witcher and switch to an FPS control setting. And then you zoom out and you are again the Grandmaster of your dungeon. Something similar in the Star Wars franchise would be amazing.
Maybe not necessarily specifically like the FPS. Like that, I do really like the idea of that. That also kind of got me thinking too. Like I used to play a lot of StarCraft as a kid, and having a Star Wars style kind of StarCraft-esque game where you have to create structures and units and buildings and upgrade things on the fly and stuff. Like I think that would also be pretty fun too. There's a lot of things that you could do, and it's pretty easy to switch the eras with and just kind of reskin things. I think that'd be kind of a fun game as well too.
Another shameless plug for Rebellion, but also a follow-up to what you said, Captain. One of the other things I've always loved about Star Wars Rebellion is how it has the strategic mode and the tactical mode. kind of thing, right? And then you spend most of your game in the strategic mode, but the things you do in the strategic mode determine, what happens, what you're able to do in the tactical mode. And then every once in a while, there's that really critical battle where the tactical mode actually completely changes the strategic mode, right? So having that big picture, small picture in the same game, kind of thing, right? And to what you were just saying, like, continuing with the joke line, right? But if there was a pod racer tycoon and it was like, you can manage and design and build your own racetrack and build your pod racer and make bets kind of thing, right? But then how smart your choices were, how you built your pod and stuff, what parts you used, determined how well you could race when you go down into like the tactical mode, actually racing the pod, and then you zoom back out in the strategic mode and you earn money from bets based on how well you did actually racing and stuff like that. I'm not a racing person, but like if there was a Star Wars themed racing game designed like that, I'd buy that.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking that too. Like, I'm not a big racing game person either, but I feel like if they did enough personalization and customization with the speeders and like really getting nitty and gritty with the parts and upgrades and stuff that you have, and as long as they had a lot of different varied maps and it was nice and highly detailed, next gen graphics, not older stuff, I think that could actually probably be a really good game.
Yeah, different planets, different environments, have a build, design your own racetrack, race course thing, maybe add some weather in there, kind of thing, right? Maybe the species of your pilot matters, the whole conversations in episode 1 where Anakin's like, I'm the only human here that can do it, kind of thing, right? And then, so maybe there's different, effects, or, that you could actually have a really deep, hybrid real-time strategy role-playing game, first-person racer, tycoon management sim, anyways.
Would you personally want something that's more kind of cartoony arcade-esque, or would you want something that's more simulator-esque, where having flight controls would be a lot better than mouse and keyboard or an Xbox controller?
In the RTS segments, hard.
Well, I mean, more harder. Yeah, I figured.
Yeah, like me personally, I'm more about the the design of the game or the depth of the game, or kind of thing, right? So I'm not too picky on the level of the graphics as long as it fits, right? So for example, for a shooter, if the graphics aren't good enough that I can tell where my shots landed or whatever, kind of thing, right? Then it's oh, this is bad graphics, kind of thing, right? But even if it's really old graphics or cartoony graphics or whatever, but that level of graphical quality doesn't interfere, at least doesn't interfere or preferably complements the rest of the game design, then yeah, I don't know if I explained that well, but yeah.
I got you.
One thing you also mentioned there was this amazing combination which Rebellion had between the turn-based strategy and the real-time strategy. Empire at War topped this again by sacrificing the turn-based strategy metagame. It was a little bit dumbed down, I would say, but improving those aspects, especially for multiplayer. I would love a big conquest map where 2 or 3 players fight each other, maybe even expand on that. Let's have 8 players, have a huge galaxy, and every time they meet, they have a real-time strategy battle where they can also influence the battle if they are not the players who are fighting each other. For example, you are a trade consortium and you send in the supplies or sabotage the supply routes. Of course, it would be a lot more complicated, a lot more niche. But yeah, like we said, back then they also tried different things. And
yeah,
just looked what sticked.
It used to be that it was every studio went out of their way to be different, and you only got sequels when an idea was particularly successful. Now it's there's almost a mandate to be as same as possible. So to be the same, have the same UI, the same mechanics, and the same phrasing, and the same wording, and the mechanic works the same way, and the options say the same thing, kind of thing, right? And it's the exception that you do something different, which I don't like.
Yeah, back in the days, I definitely counted to the group of players who always complain, I don't want another Call of Duty. I don't want another Command and Conquer, which is basically a standard formula back then. I also preferred new things.
Yeah, to dovetail off of that for a second, like even the original Call of Duties, right? The original Call of Duty was a new game on an old engine. Then they did, subsequent new game, greatly expanded, added features on their own engine. Then they took their own engine, did completely different setting, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, right? Kind of thing, right? And then since the original, Infinity Ward ceased to exist in its original form, now how many games have had not only is it effectively the same game, but it's the same title, right? like how many games are called Modern Warfare or whatever now? I can't even keep up. So when we can't even come up with a new name for the same game.
I mentioned that in our review to the original Battlefront 2. I so hated that companies do that, not renaming the game, just using the same name. It's nearly impossible now to Google something if you're not sure what correct term you have to add, that you look for the right game or the right era. It's unbelievable.
Yes, we now have to memorize the release years. Even with totally different products, the number of people we have coming to the Star Wars Rebellion community Discord that are looking to play the board game Star Wars Rebellion, and the number of people we have coming to the Star Wars Rebellion community Discord that are like, man, it took me so long to find you. I thought it was strange that no one could connect to my session in the board games Discord.
Yeah, it's very bad practice.
Now, not complaining they made a board game version of the computer game, but it's still like, guys, call it a little different.
That's true. I want to play the board game, but it's expensive as hell. Yeah, but wrapping up the strategy segment, the last question for me would be for you guys. What do you prefer general in a strategy game? Just the controls of the units or the base building? Or otherwise, does a good RTS need a base building segment?
I feel like there has to be a balance between the both, because if you have one without the other, I mean, it's just kind of like, I don't know. I'm always somebody that feels like more features are always better, just to keep things fresh and less limiting.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I quite... Did you ask about strategy games in general or RTS specifically?
In general, we could also expand that.
In general, then, I don't think they need to have either, right? I guess, sorry, unavoidably I'm going to talk about Rebellion again. I guess there's a little bit... I'm sorry, there's a phone ringing, 1 second.
No problem. I guess Vato's repair shop tycoon is calling. Let's give him a minute. In the meantime, Euler, I shall say something to you from Gum. Does this name ring a bell?
Yeah, yep, Gum's a good guy.
Basically, happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have your birthday today, or was it?
Yeah, my birthday's today. Yeah, it's today.
Oh, I'm feeling now so sorry that I dragged you into this.
Oh, no worries at all, man. I'm actually very, very fortunate this year because, as you know, like there's this huge movement today to have people play Battlefront 2 to kind of, push for Battlefront 3. And so, like I said, right now in my group, all the VCs are just stacked with people playing and having a good time, which to me is like the best gift because, I've been with this group for a really, really long time. I have moved up the ranks. I'm not necessarily like in a senior position, but I am an advisor for a lot of different departments, and I'm kind of involved with a little bit of everything in the day-to-day too. So just being able to be in this group for as long as I have to help out the community and just kind of hang out with my friends has been a lot of fun. But now to see like a second coming of Battlefront 2 with, again, like a highest player peak of 12,000, just yesterday in the game's history, and now everybody today is playing the game, is just, perfect birthday gift for myself. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for more than to hang out with my friends and play one of the games that I love the most. And after this that's exactly where I'm going to be, just playing some Battlefront 2 with my buddies.
That's nice to hear that you're so close to the community.
It's my second family. I really wasn't expecting them to be, I guess I should say, when I originally joined, like I said, I saw a mod showcase for the 104th back in the day, a couple years back. The 104th is broken down into companies, and at the time, these different companies would specialize in like a certain form of combat. So you had like the mechanized company that was like the vehicles, you had the marksman company, and those were the snipers, riflemen, airborne, the jetpack guys. Everybody kind of had their own corner of the 104th. And within those companies were platoons, and platoons were basically like the main group of people that, you know, was your family that you would play with, or the server that you'd be in. We'd have different platoon servers, and back in the day, every single platoon had their own like different kind of helmet design. And so it was really cool where we'd play a game of Battlefront with your friends, and if you look on Discord, you could see all the different platoons, and it was almost like all the different families or houses from the 104th that would show up to play in the game, and it gave you this sense of being part of something way bigger than yourself. You know, the group, like I said, is international, so I mean, I've stayed up late playing with people from Sweden to Germany to Australia to, you know, really just every single corner of the world. So it's been a lot of fun and really cool to kind of just see, again, how Star Wars can just bring all these different communities together.
It totally is unique.
I'm hoping for Battlefront 3. I'm hoping this. I'm hoping all the effort today at least gets us something.
Yeah, it would be so nice to have something new, something which really evolves the Battlefront community. Now it's currently stale.
I mean, I would even, you know, be content with like, because, you know, there's been talks of like, you know, EA letting the Kyber team have more access to, you know, the Battlefront game and all the code and stuff. Like I said, the Kyber team is the ones that kind of like identified all these issues and helped fix things. There was this thing called the 0 HP glitch where hackers had figured out how to use an in-game command menu to basically set everybody's health to 1, and you couldn't kill anybody. So for 3 months, the game was literally unplayable.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, it was terrible. So, I mean, like I said, the game's gone through a lot. Modders have kept it alive. I'm hoping that, you know, maybe at some point somebody says, hey, you know, maybe we'll just let these guys kind of take it from here. But we can only hope.
And it wouldn't be the first time. I guess, Euler, you remember the original Battlefield games?
Yep.
Back then, in 1942, there was a mods team, basically, which created a modern combat mod. And it was so good that basically somebody in the studio said, hey, we have to hire this team. And they helped creating Battlefield 2.
Oh, that's incredible. That I didn't know.
So there are events in the past which are similar, so maybe it can happen.
I'm just hoping that it's for the good reasons, right? Like, I hope that they bring on developers just so that way they, you know, they can help kind of continue the company's vision. Because, like, you know, unfortunately, we've seen cases where, you know, they'll hire an artist or something like that just so that way that person doesn't stand as opposition. Like, you know, I think about the guy, and this is completely separate from Star Wars, but the one guy who made the that Warhammer short Astartes, which was an incredible fan-made film that was, like, better than any gigantic, like, movie company could make. And he did this all by himself over the course of I don't even know how long. And Games Workshop themselves, you know, approached him and said, oh my gosh, your work's amazing. Like, you know, we'd love you to come work for us. And none of his content's been published ever since then. Like, they own all of his work. He hasn't published anything Warhammer related. Like, it really sucks that they've kind of like snubbed him out almost, you know. So I'm just hoping that if they call people in, it's for expertise and not, you know, to kind of dispel competition.
That's a really sad story. I always am amazed basically that companies don't do that. They go more in the direction of sending the lawyers into your direction than to say, hey, you're doing amazing content, work for us.
So it's just a shame, you know, like when companies used to stand for creativity and, you know, just being able to create stuff, and it was more about enjoying what these people and these companies brought like value to people, and now it's just, you know, it's all been privatized and monetized. Completely separate again, sorry, from Star Wars, but if you haven't heard recently, there's a huge issue going on in the Bionicle community. Basically, there was this game called Mask of Power that was a fan-made game that was being made over the last 8 years. And it was like an open-world Bionicle game that LEGO had actually given the green light and support to for, you know, the last 8 years, and the game is probably just a couple of months out from a full release. And LEGO has just recently kind of come back and forced the company or forced that team to shelf the project entirely. Without releasing it. And so like the entire Lego and Bionicle community is outraged, and if you go onto like Lego's Instagram and social media pages, you're going to see people like going like hashtag release Masks of Power and stuff like that too, which is really just a shame. Like I said, these companies kind of just trying to get competition out of the way, but I'm hoping for the Bionicle people, since Bionicle is one of my favorite series from a kid. I hope they get some peace with that.
It's unbelievable. Also in the Star Wars franchise, we had a similar experience. Can't really remember the name of the developer team, but there was a group which tried to recreate the Battlefront 3 game in their own engine.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, they had some troubles.
Did EA send them a cease and desist? Because like I remember that they had brought back these old files. Wow, that's incredible, and like in the worst way. That's so sad.
currently we only can hope that the mod for Battlefront 2, Star Wars Battlefront 3 Legacy, is surviving. They are using a lot of the original content in their mods, but since it's such an old game, I guess they don't care. We can just hope that it will go under the radar.
It's a shame. It's also a shame too, like these companies are trying to stop people from adding lore and stuff to the universe and, you know, helping create stuff that the fans want, when the actual stuff that they end up pushing out just pisses people off.
Yeah, so true. Speaking about truth, somebody is back.
That was unintentionally perfect timing there, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, unfortunately, I've completely forgotten the question, my answer, and my train of thought and what we were talking about, but I am here again, so...
We basically talked about building in strategy games, the process of building something, if it's necessary or not.
Ah, okay, gotcha. That's right, yeah. I'm a big fan of logistics, and I'm a very much a not fan of like arbitrary powers, I guess, for lack of better words, right? So whether it's, you know, like supply docks and Command and Conquer generals, or, you know, whether it's your population, your towns, and like Empire Total War, or whether it's the very simple yet sophisticated and dynamic and deep economy that I could talk all day about in Rebellion, even though it's quite simple overall. I'm always a big fan of, you know, you having to actually have, you know, like strategies are budgets, right? And you actually having to like budget resources, earn resources, like, you know, figure out your priorities. And that can be as simple as you just have to have like, you know, enough money to do this or whatever, right? You know, or it can be, you know, ever more sophisticated than that. I'm not a fan of, I can't think of a great clear example off the top of my head this second, but there's a lot of RTSs out there where it's just like, oh, you know, you level up or you got to this position and, you know, now you can click a button and do this thing or make some enemy units go away, you know, kind of thing, right? And I'm never a fan of that. I'm much more a heady gamer than a click and boom gamer. I guess is part of that, but yeah. I don't know if that's quite what you were asking me or not, but yeah.
No, that's totally fine. I'm also I'm a mix of both, I would say. I'm loving the strategy aspect of gaming, but also the click and boom aspect of gaming is also nice.
Yeah.
And in the combination of that, I also like in Conquest Frontier Wars, a game from the 90s, an RTS game. There you had a supply ship which gave you again missiles for your tactical cruisers or big battleships. Your ships still have the normal turrets, they will always fire, but they run out of missiles. So you need a supply ship giving them again missiles for the combat. I like that. It's sometimes, of course, makes a game too complicated, but I like options in my games. I like different approaches of gaming.
Well said.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would like to clarify real quick too. I love the booms too. The emphasis is on the just click to make it go boom, you know, kind of thing, right? Because what the great satisfaction I get from like thinking heavy games or, you know, kind of thing, right, is you know, when you've taken the time to like, you know, design your fleet or, you know, build up your economy, build up your army, and then because of that you can make a lot of booms happen and the other guy's stuff goes away because you outthought them or out-resourced them or, you know, whatever kind of thing, right? That's satisfying.
That's totally true. Like I mentioned, I like options. I really hate it when a game is forcing me in one direction or forcing me on one map type. Like the amazing in-game browser in Battlefront 2. I want to decide on what map, on what game mode I play. Give me options, please. I bought the game.
Are you talking about the 2017 version, or?
I'm talking about the 2017 version where you can select the game mode, but if you're... Oh fuck, brain lag. How is the game mode called? We're not boarding the capital ships, but you still...
Supremacy? You talk about the ground one, or?
Yeah. Where you have different types of supremacy maps, basically. It's also similar to the assault mode in Unreal Tournament.
Yeah.
And I really don't like that you don't have really the saying in what map you're playing and what kind of faction, and it's not that clear.
That was kind of like my criticism earlier too, like along with the in-game squad system for Battlefront. I just find it really, really disappointing that like a bunch of really, user-friendly UI options and functions, that's the word I'm looking for, weren't really transferred over to Battlefront 2. Like there's no server browser, there's no, the friends list adding is really rudimentary at best. And then, like I said, too, no in-game squad systems, vehicles being classes instead of actual vehicles to enter. Yeah, there was a lot more to be desired with Battlefront 2, and it's a shame that support was ended so early. But I'm gonna be the shameless plug for Rex that was here earlier from the modding team. But Kyber has all those features. I've been talking really, really closely with their team, which is why I was so excited to hear that he was on this call. And but the Kyber, what they're working on is really going to give all the power back to the players and introduce features and stuff that we should have had from the beginning. It has a full server browser feature. I don't know if they got it to work, but I heard that allegedly there's actually a server queue system. So like if you're the host for a server, right, and you want to host your own Battlefront servers, you can pick what game you want, you can pick the game mode, you can pick the map, you can pick what faction you play as, and you can queue up like 6-7 games in a row. So the first 2 games you play are Supremacy, then the 3rd game you play is Blast, then the 5th game you play is Starfighter Assault, then the last game you play is, Galactic Assault or whatever, right? And you're going to be able to like actually pick and choose what you want to play and create a player queue for maps and game modes. So it gives you all of the developmental powers that like, you should have in a game, and also a little bit more. So I'm very, very, very excited for Kyber to be fully released, and that's going to be a humongous victory for the entire Battlefront community.
Minor tangent here, but in the context of everything you were just talking about that we've talked about earlier tonight too, there's a site out there, fpsadmin.com, which is the last remaining of what used to be a family of sites, Call of Duty admin, codadmin.com, bfadmin.com. There's a few others I don't remember, and they compiled a list of like, this is what we consider to be the minimum for like any multiplayer game as far as like features and stuff. And this is what we consider to be the ideal. And all the forums and stuff are long gone. It's just I think it's just like one home landing page that's just basically the feature list, kind of thing, right? And this hasn't changed since 2001 or whatever. I think with like the Medal of Honor community was how that game server administrator community got started, I think, if I recall correctly. But it's kind of sad that like in 2025, with a very few exceptions, like Off-World Industries for squad and related, kind of thing, right? It's still games continuously being released without the same features that are, still necessary if you want a community, if you want, yeah. So, anyway.
Yeah, totally. I find it so interesting for myself that I'm amazed by a mod team, a server team behind, Kyber. The team behind Kyber. All those features are just basic features I want in a game, and those guys need to patch it in to really make the game enjoyable, so I can really play every map I want.
Yeah, here's hoping that it gets released soon, because like I said, like I'm definitely with you on that too, and there's these features in the game that should have been there to begin with as far as I'm concerned, and it'll be really nice to get them in there. It'll be like a new golden age of the game, and that's kind of why I asked earlier if it was possible for that stuff to go over to console, because I know that like, the game is struggling just the same on console as it is on PC sometimes, and it's unfortunate that they may not get a chance to experience those awesome features and the work that gets put in by those mod teams.
Absolutely. Splitting communities is never good. But yeah, I would say we are slowly wrapping it up here. Do you guys have any additional ideas about a game genre, your old favorite games, when they remake it, what should it include, stuff like that?
I feel like I've definitely said my piece. Battlefront 3, please, soon. Somebody help us.
Let's see. I guess I have kind of 2 different lines on that if Circa doesn't have anything to say right now. So on the one hand, I was super psyched about the announcement that there was a new Star Wars strategy game being developed a couple years ago, and now that we know I forget the name of it, but now that we know it's going to be this like real-time tactics, like quasi-hero role-playing thing. I mean, maybe it'll still be good, right? But I was looking forward to another, Empire at War, Rebellion, like not the same thing necessarily, but I was like, oh, finally we're going to have the 4th Star Wars strategy game ever, kind of thing, right? Or 5th or whatever it is now, kind of thing, right?
Part of me wonders if us as fans are kind of the reason why some of these games don't get remade, because we have such strong modding communities that keep the game alive after. I wonder if these studios and stuff just think like, oh, they've got it figured out, they don't need us. Which, I mean, in certain cases isn't necessarily like a bad thing, because I would absolutely trust the passion and power of players over like a corporate team and all, but I don't know.
Yeah, kind of more to what we were saying earlier. I don't even necessarily want more of the same. Like as much as I would love to have a like a modern Rebellion, essentially, kind of thing, right? Like I want there's so many different ways to like bake the cake when it comes to like strategy, kind of thing, right? And the Star Wars universe and all of the content that's created, officially under the IP is just crying out for like more. Okay, you want to say grand strategy's done because Rebellion still got a healthy, thriving community. Well, then you've got sort of like mid-level strategy, and then you've got kind of I'd really call Empire at War more grand, more like operational than like strategy, really, kind of thing, right? But whatever you want to, where's our grand tactical like fleet design and battle game that's like basically just like the the Rebellion tactical mode or the Empire space battles, but like really in depth or whatever, like there's so, or like what we were talking about earlier with Pod Racer Tycoon, or you could imagine a bunch of different aspects of the Star Wars universe having like a equivalent of that idea we discussed. So.
One thing there is to mention that sometimes those big companies, they don't want to make money, I think, or I feel. Because sometimes they don't re-release old games. Moving away from the Star Wars franchise to my other big love, Star Trek, we have so many great Star Trek games which you couldn't buy for over 20 years. Now they slowly re-release them on GOG, but it's still only the tip of the iceberg. There's still so much you still can't buy. And yeah, we fans would buy everything Star Wars, Star Trek, Stargate related. So give us the stuff. You want money, I know it.
I wonder why sometimes when they don't. I wonder if it's just because like in their mind it's just like, I can't sell the game for the same price if I re-release it, and it's going to cost just as money as to make a new game. So like, why would I waste the money to remake an old game if I'm not going to get a new game price for it? Which, and I guess in that regard I can kind of understand, but I mean still it kind of sucks that like us as the players end up getting stuck with that,
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean redo everything. I just meant re-release the old games which were only released on discs.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because I mean, I'm sure like there has to be like some amount that has to go back into like reporting stuff and like, putting it back into the game, or have to update things or get it to work with like, modern day systems and stuff. So I'm sure at like some point it's, a lot of effort just to go back on something that, there's not a lot of like good faith decisions made with like, having games made, right? Like people don't make games just because they're like, oh, well, I want to make this game. I don't care if it sells well. I just want to make it because like I like this game and I want people to play it again. There's always the huge money aspect involved with it. And if you can't like turn an actual profit off of it, I feel like companies aren't going to do that, which again, why the modders have to.
Absolutely. There's a return in investment, definitely. But some games are just easy. They just have to write a new installer and they can sell it again. Older Quake titles, for example, this engine, you just can't kill it. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, like how many utilities were there back in the day for like Quake 3 related stuff? The Q3E minimizer, the Q3E overlay, the Q3E chat for Xfire, what like and there was like 12 different versions of them on every little mod site or community thing so.
Quake 3 though, man, what a great game.
And the amazing thing is you still can play all those games in high resolution. You want to play Quake 3 in 4K? No problem. Just enter it into the console.
Can't imagine playing Quake at 4K, dude. That'd probably like break my entire brain.
I'm still playing Elite Force and sometimes the Jedi Knight games in glorious, not 4K, 4040p. I know I'm a noob. Well guys, especially Circa, anything you would like to add before we end it?
I guess the kind of Star Wars game that I would really want to see is I'm more of like a adventure, like action adventure type game person. So I would love to see more of that. I already said I like the new Jedi games, and that's been great. But I would like to see like something. I don't know if you guys played the Hogwarts Legacy game, but I would love to see a Star Wars game kind of in that vein, where like you start out as like a Jedi Padawan in the temple, and then you like learn and grow as a Jedi, and like go through all of these like trials and like all that kind of stuff. I would love to see something like that. And then also like I don't know, more open world stuff. Just being able to like travel the galaxy. Outlaws does in like a very very minimal way, and I would like to see like way more planets and choose your kind of like how like Star Wars Galaxies did it, where like you choose your origin and then you can just go and do whatever you want. Like that's the dream Star Wars game for me. I think just have like the whole galaxy at your fingertips as whoever you want to be.
Back then I had to hire bounty hunters to protect me as a crafter, to go to the mining stations I rented, to recharge them in power and get the ore, and then get back, crafted everything, dropped it on the market, and then hire again bounty hunters and medics to accompany me again to another adventure. Only in Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah, see, that's really cool.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I want like a new version of that. Like it doesn't have to necessarily be an MMO, but I mean that would just be kind of the icing on the cake of like having it co-op or something like that, where you could just go into the Star Wars galaxy with your friends as whoever you want to be. And yeah, I mean I play the Old Republic quite a bit still, and that kind of scratches that itch to an extent, but like that's been out for like over 10 years now.
Yeah, about to say that's been showing its age for a while now.
Yeah, so I'm ready for something new.
Age is for me okay, especially graphics. They don't have to look the nicest in my opinion. What important is for me that the features are getting better. It's more stable. That I want in a new title, definitely. Has any one of you played, for example, Freelancer?
Nope.
It's an open world space sim, but you don't control it with a joystick, it's via mouse control. So it's a little bit on the arcadic side, but you still have trading, equip your ship, mining, space travel, build up alliances, have bounty hunters, so many little things. And I think a trading sim or a bounty hunter simulation would be really nice, where you just, hey, I have a list of targets, I have to hunt them down, either as an FPS or in a space sim. You could do a lot.
I feel like that's what everybody was kind of hoping Star Wars Bounty Hunters was going to be, and I feel like it did not deliver on that concept, at least from what I saw on it.
Do you mean the unfinished, what was it called?
Oh, not
Okay.
1313. Yeah, no. I was talking about because they just had that one game that came out recently, and they were just like, oh, you're going to be a bounty hunter and all this stuff, and I feel like people are really, really excited to get like a kind of open world, grab some bounties, kind of, just make it out there in the world and survive kind of type thing. And it seems like they're more trying to set up characters for like an IP than they are, making a game just to make the game. Like Cal Kestis, right? Like Cal Kestis, like the one thing that kind of bothered me is there's another show that the character, I can't remember his name is, but it's called Shameless. He's in the show, and they use the actor's face as the face for Cal Kestis. It's the same person as he is in real life. And so I'm like, okay, well, the second I saw that, I know that they're going to make like a movie and a TV show out of him, and he's going to get like his own thing. And that in and of itself isn't necessarily bad, but it's just like, there's a lot less than opportunity for you to kind of carve your own path as who you want to be in a universe when these people are kind of already established, or, there's a plan in mind for who they're going to be.
Yeah, they're not RPGs, they're just
Right.
narrative-based stories. Yeah.
Well, guys, I would say after more than 3 hours, we call it a night.
Sounds good.
Thanks everybody for joining. It was a really nice talk. And yeah, I can't wait to talk to you again in the future. So this will definitely be a yearly, annual thing. So you're always welcome back.
Well, thank you very much for the insight. This was for the invite as well too. Like, this was really, really fun getting to hear everybody else's parts too, and seeing just how big these communities are. It was very, very humbling. So thank you very much for the invite.
Dittos.
Yeah.
Thank you, Captain.
Thanks.
Yeah, also for me, it's always nice to hear the different sides of the communities. And like one of you mentioned, it brings us together. It's such a nice experience to meet people from all around the world. You can't have it anywhere else.
A pluribus unum out of many one.
What did you just call me?
Okay, guys, I would say that's it for this video. Leave us a comment, tell us what you think about the games, and of course, play the games. Until next time, bye bye.
May the force be with you.